Good morning, everyone. This is the Senate Education Committee, and we'll be hearing some more House bills today. But first, would you please join me in Senator Sullivan, Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Our first bill for consideration is House Bill 90, and the prime sponsor is Representative Ladd. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the Senate Education Committee. It's, as usual, a thrill to be here in your committee. I'm here today to introduce HB 90. This is a bill that deals with part-time teachers, and it's a result of what we had attempted to do several years ago in a committee conference, and it was unfortunately wasn't signed off by everybody. Everybody agreed to it at one point in time, but it hadn't gone through a thorough hearing and vetting, so it's back. And I introduced this bill this year for the following reasons. We have concurrent and dual enrollment programs offered in the state, which are really high priorities amongst the university system and the community college system to try and have our students, while they're in 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, experience the opportunity to take courses which give them credit for college at the same time they are taking courses for credit for graduation from high school. And hopefully these students will go on after they've taken the courses in the high school and continue either in our community college system or go on to our university system, either Keene, Plymouth, or UNH, and stay in our state. As we know, we have about 60% of our kids that graduate go outside for college. That's one of the issues which we're trying to deal with and try to keep these people in our state and have them move forward. So this bill was put forward after, and backing off just a little bit here, back when we introduced this whole concept back in 2017, I was the one that brought concurrent dual enrollment legislation forward. And within our statute right now in 188, RSA 188, it specifically speaks to the policy shall also comply with the standards for accreditation and program development established by the National Alliance for Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships. We want to make sure that the concurrent dual enrollment programs that are taught in our high schools maintain that same academic standard that we require through NECHI and the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, that's what we used to call them, and meet those standards so they're all transferable, not just to our system, but anywhere in the United States.
Excuse me, Representative, are you talking about
Yes,
House
and
Bill 90?
yeah, I just gave a little background on that.
Okay.
Now, with this bill right here, we've introduced it for the purpose of, we have students which are in schools like in Manchester or in Franklin, where the staff that's on board in those schools may not have a master's degree in the area that they're teaching the concurrent enrollment program. Maybe it be mathematics, or maybe it be a science or some area of technology, etc. We feel it's absolutely necessary that even though they don't have those master's level courses, that they have the opportunity to receive that. Now what the community college has indicated and has done, they said, we will have our staff who are teaching this at the community college level, who meet the standards of NECHI, come down and instruct in the school. And that has been done in Franklin. Now the issue becomes, those people are coming down, don't have teacher certification. And so now they can't teach, but they're the ones doing the instruction at the university or community college level. What this bill does, it goes through A, B, C, and D. It says that a person that's going to be coming down is authorized to teach not more than 20 hours per week, must have a criminal background check, must be an employee, employed part-time or full-time by one of the institutions, community college system or the university system in New Hampshire. And D, as it's been amended in the House Education Committee, have expertise or significant professional experience to teach in the subject area offered by the school district or an approved college dual or concurrent enrollment course. I, for one, feel as the sponsor of the bill, this has taken this bill in the wrong direction. And why I'm saying that, I believe in the intent of what's there, but the bill is more narrowly scoped. It was submitted for the purpose of allowing concurrent and dual enrollment courses to be taught, not just any course, and not a course maybe coming down from an employee in the college system who doesn't meet the standards that we want in certification. The people that are coming down will be authorized by the Department of Education to teach in the school these concurrent dual enrollment courses up to 20 hours per week. And they must abide by the principles of the Code of Conduct, which is very important. They're not obligated to the consequences of that, seeing they're not certified teachers. In other words, suspension or losing their ticket, being suspended for a while, or having a letter of reprimand. No, what it is they must follow those 4 basic principles of the Code of Conduct, which is very, very important. So I'd like to see this bill modified to go back to where we initially intended it to be, so that we can get the folks out of the community college system to come down and work in the schools, where the schools that want to have concurrent enrollment for their kids, but they can't do it because they don't have a master's level person to teach that in the school. So it's between then the local receiving school and the community college system to set up an agreement in which they can get these people down. This has been done in Franklin, but it's come to our attention they don't have teacher certification. They need the certification. So you have before you a amendment which looks much like what we had proposed earlier on with this bill to authorize, and that would be taking out item D and scratching D to read, is authorized to teach an approved college dual and concurrent enrollment course in the high school that has the same quality and rigor as the courses offered on campus at the sponsoring college or university. So you must maintain those standards. It doesn't say that you can come down and teach any course. You must be teaching a concurrent dual enrollment course. So I'll conclude there and take any questions if you have them.
Senator Altshuler?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for that overview. Is there a specific course or series of courses that is inspiring wanting to deviate away from certified teachers? Like, is there a lack somewhere? Because
No, there's no aim at this to.
is there a subject matter?
It's the subject matter that's, for example, we may have a person that's teaching AP mathematics in a high school, but not with the master's program. So they can't count it as a concurrent enrollment. They can't get the 3 college credits at the same time or the 4 college credits. By doing it this way, you can contract with that community college system. That person will come down. And so we're not trying to circumvent certification at all. We're trying to help those schools which don't have the staff in place to do this, to offer the same opportunity that the district right next door may have those staff on board that can do it. Or it may be a result of scheduling in your school. You're a person with that master's is scheduled by the block scheduling, the scheduling be over here that time, and we have another group of students over here that would very much benefit from. That's when you pull down that professor from the community college system and have them teach that course, and they also receive the credit for that course, and they also for high school and for concurrent dual enrollment. This legislation right here that you're seeing has been done by the community college system, the amendment. It's been worked with folks there and through the Department of Education. They recognize it in higher education that this is the intentional, the primary aim of this bill was to allow concurrent dual enrollment to be taught by somebody that's a college professor, part-time or full-time, but you can't, and the limitations are there in the bill as to what they can or cannot do. But we want to make sure that all students have that equal opportunity to receive this type of education and to then stay in our state and go on to the community college system, knowing that they now can do this. Smaller schools may not have the people that can teach these these courses.
I have Senator
follow up?
Prentice first.
Okay. Got to follow up. I can wait.
Okay.
Okay,
Follow
yeah,
up.
just to keep.
Thank you very much, Representative Ladd. So I see where you're going. I follow you here. What I think might be missing, or what I see as the missing piece, is that while the intention of this is to find a place for non-certified teachers who teach at the community college level or the college level to be a resource to high schools that are understaffed or don't have on their staff the people who can teach the dual enrollment course. What I see missing here is the piece that says, if and only if a public high school cannot meet this need. So is there a reason why that is not inserted here? Because what I'm seeing as this reads is that this actually opens a door for public high schools to start replacing certified teachers with adjunct professors from the community college system who are not certified high school teachers.
I don't think it's going to be opening the door. I think it's just going to be allowing those schools like Franklin that don't have, they're the ones that have been using this process, but they've been told too, these people aren't certified to teach. So that's why we're saying right here that they're not certified, they're authorized by the department, and they will go through the same hoops that anybody goes through in terms of criminal background check. They will also have to be compliant with all those standards, academic standards, which are put out by the Higher Education Council, NECHI. And so I think this is, I don't think it's going to be abused. I think it's what the end result is, that we're going to have folks that are students that are going to be able to acquire some of the courses that they really need. And I don't think this is going to be something which is going to be widely used, but it be used in those situations where the superintendent, the school board, the principal saying, I don't have the wherewithal to do this. And we have a wonderful math program going on, but the person doesn't have that master's program, or they're being used over here. So it's, and with our finance the way it is right now, this is a wonderful way to ensure that our level of curriculum and instruction maintains the academic standards that we absolutely need. I think your question might be also answered through the community college system, which is going to be testifying on this bill. Also, Department of Education, the Director of Higher Education is also here today.
Senator Prentice.
Thank you very much. And Representative Ladd, always good to see you. So I remember this, and I was on the committee of conference, when we worked on this last year, and ultimately was replaced. And I was replaced over some pieces that I did disagreed with that have been fixed this year. One of them has to do with the number of hours that somebody can teach, because it started to look too much like a regular, we were bringing in folks to teach that should be actually certified to teach. But let's just go back to the overall intent, which, as I remember it, this was, I use the word pitched, that we had members of the community, especially in some of these smaller communities, that were had an expertise in, say, arts, that had an expertise in, in computers, in different subject matter areas where the smaller schools were unable to recruit and bring in teachers. They either couldn't afford them or they were unable to recruit them. So this was a way to take identified members of the community who had a specialty and bring them in and put them in a framework, and have the safety, the criminal background check piece is part of this. That was in there too. And that was the original, and that kind of evolved from there. And I wanted to just get back to that because that's how I understood it last year. And I think that doing the dual enrollment, using the community college system folks and bringing them in, I think that is like a good track that we're on. So I wanted to just touch base on all of those pieces. And the last thing, but here's the real question. So again, there's the history as I remember it. I remember where we got to the community conference. I think that we've gotten further than we were there. But in the section that talks about, so line 15, section 2, part-time teachers shall practice the principles identified in the New Hampshire Code of Conduct and Ethics for Educational Professionals. And I believe you already spoke this, but I want to confirm. So this is in there and says, because this was a sticking point. They had to be, work by the Code of Conduct, but they were not licensed. So it says they have to do it. But I believe I heard you say, and this is how I read it, that there isn't an enforcement mechanism. I mean, there is for people who have taught, who've been educator credentialed, educator licensed before. But if this is somebody new, I don't think it's enough to say that they have to practice this. How do we, and maybe I misunderstood you. How do we, if we say they have to, how do we know if they don't, how do we manage this?
I think the way we manage it is through the Department of Education, because we've also given the authority, if you look at the last line, 541A, they will make the rules for this to work. And I've been assured by the department that they will keep this bar high. What we're really wanting to make sure is that our academic standards in this state don't go underneath that bar that we're seeing happening in Maine right now. We're seeing it happening in a number of states. And when a teacher comes in and saying, well, I've taught over there, well, that's not good enough for New Hampshire. We want our academic standards maintained. And I think that's the position of the department. They want to see that the standards, not just of the academic side, but of the code of ethics and conduct are followed. And I think that it's important for us to realize that these folks that come from the college system all are not going to be eligible for this. They may have a problem with their criminal background check because they're not certified. The majority of people in the Department of Education at UNH or Keene or Plymouth are not certified teachers. And so what we want to make sure is that the rules that are made through the department really make sure that we're getting folks into the classroom which are going to maintain this academic standard, the rigorness of the course, the academics, and also our perspective on what we believe the pedagogy should be, and that what we believe that the conduct and the professional behaviors are expected. So I think 541 will help clean that up a little bit when it comes back to JELCAR.
I'm good for now. Thank you for taking the trip down memory lane.
You're welcome.
Any Senator Arcello, one more question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Again, did the committee, when this was in the House, discuss, I'm sorry, I've not seen the hearing of your original debate on this. So could you tell me what the debate was around letting go of the idea that we would be giving space in public high schools for non-certified teachers? I just see it as part of an overall trend. So,
Senator, I can't speak to what happened in the committee, seeing that I'm not chair of that committee. I'm chair of education funding.
yeah.
And on the policy side where this was heard, I presented the bill and I had to exit quickly for
okay.
another meeting. So you might ask that
I'll
of
have to
folks
watch
which are coming up.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much.
More than welcome. Have a good day.
Representative Glenn Cordelli, and I will remind everyone here, if what you want to say already has been said, make your presentation very short. And if you have something written down, give it to our aides here and they will distribute it to us. Thank you very much. Representative Cordelli.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Senators. For the record, I'm Glenn Cordelli, representing Tufton Borough, Wolfboro, and Ossipee in the beautiful Lakes region. And I'll start by going down memory lane. And my memory isn't as good as Senator Prentice's memory, so I had to go back and do some research. And I think before you have the bills from last year, which is HB 1298. And the top one is the Senate version that was passed on a voice vote. And then the amendment to it made in the House, and that was passed on the consent calendar. So, as Senator Prentice pointed out, this went to a committee of conference, and the committee of conference started down the road of using the adjunct faculty as was indicated, but ultimately the committee of conference was not able to come to agreement, and there was no sign off on that. So Representative Ladd submitted the bill this year that he was describing, and I know he has an amendment, but the House actually amended his original bill, and you should have that in front of you as amended by the House. And the only difference really is that we tried to blend in the intent from the House and the Senate bills last year, and we added in D, that in addition to the community college or university system teaching an approved dual and concurrent enrollment course in high school, that the faculty could teach a subject area course in the high school other than dual and concurrent enrollment, because we've heard about teacher shortages, and as Representative Ladd pointed out, we want to make sure that there is high quality instruction and high quality courses being taught in all of our public schools. And so I think that this will help to put us down that path so that the faculty members can teach regular courses if they have the professional experience to do so, as well as the dual and concurrent enrollment courses. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deborah House.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Moore. My name is members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Deborah Howes. I am the president of the American Federation of Teachers New Hampshire. And we are here today in opposition to this bill as introduced this morning, mainly because of the part that the original sponsor of the bill said he wanted removed. We do not feel that community college or university faculty coming down to teach in the high school should be open to any course. I think limiting it just to those dual and concurrent enrollment courses that have the same standards as community college courses is the most appropriate use of the uncertified part-time teachers. If you're opening it up to every course, you have a great possibility of students ending up with a teacher who may be a subject matter expert, but who is missing all those other pieces that someone who has gone through teacher certification learns. Those pieces like classroom management, how to deal with motivating students, how to deal with handling student behaviors, which are very different in a high school freshman than they are in a college student who is paying to be there. Also, we do have concerns about support for English language learners who have every right to take any course that they have fulfilled the prerequisites for in a high school, and for special education students who, again, have every right to take any course in a high school that they have fulfilled the prerequisites for. So if a community college faculty or university faculty can teach any course in a high school, how are they going to handle differentiating lessons to meet the needs of these particular learners if they haven't gone through a certification, a teacher preparation program prior to certification, or gone through a cohort where they have learned these skills? We have concerns that student needs will not be met. And again, students have the right to take any course they've fulfilled the prerequisites for. So those are our concerns with the bill. What the sponsor of the bill mentioned, taking out that first part of Section 1, Part D, and just limiting it to dual and concurrent enrollment would answer a lot of our concerns, because then you're just having the same teacher who could teach at the community college teach it in the high schools. We understand the concerns about maybe displacing high school teachers. We would suggest that you consider adding that the school draft some kind of memorandum of how they're going to support the students who have those specific learning needs, like English language learners, special education students, when they're in the classroom with the part-time uncertified teacher. It could be requiring that those teachers take a couple of workshops on how to support those students' needs. It could be they assign other staff to help, and those other staff, of course, given extra duties, should get extra pay, obviously. We don't expect anyone to be given extra duties and not be compensated. So I would suggest that might be a good addition to this bill. But the students' needs should be considered, and they should not be denied the chance to have someone who is a subject area expert teach them, but also be able to meet their needs, not just, know the subject really well and be teaching above their heads. Those are our concerns with the bill. If they can be addressed, we could support the bill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions by the committee members? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I think the only people who take on extra work for no pay would be here on this table. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the extra work. Yeah. So that was. So is there any concern though? I'm with not having it spelled out in the statute that the high school has used every avenue to fill the role prior to hopping over to the community college to pull down someone there. I foresee this looks lovely. I will will not deny that this seems like, on the surface, an idea that possibly fills a need that we have not heard any testimony is needed, other than some anecdotal information from one high school. So I'm waiting to hear, who needs this. And my concern, just under the surface, is that this is a way to circumvent having certified teachers in the high school, specifically for the reasons you just enumerated, that teaching at the high school with the differentiation in learning abilities, styles, maturity levels, the fact that it's compulsory is very, very different than teaching over at the community college level. And I am concerned that this is a way to circumvent hiring certified teachers to balance a school budget.
So you are suggesting this should be amended to, maybe have a certification of need, that you have tried to fill those positions and you've offered competitive pay? That would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yes, it would improve this bill. We have certainly heard that there are some communities where they cannot hire and retain certified teachers, particularly in math and science at the high school level. They hire for a little bit, and then the teachers move on to a district that pays more after a year or so, because our schools are not well supported, mostly from the state level, and then you can only go to the well so many times at the local level to fill out the balance of your budget.
Heard.
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Okay. I have a question for
Okay.
you, Ms. Howe. You said that the sponsor wanted to take out a section.
He
Which
was
one are you?
talking, so Section 1, Part D, what I just heard him talking about was removing the first section of that, has expertise or significant professional experience to teach in a subject area offered by the school or district.
That's
That's the part that I heard him saying he wanted to take out, but he wanted to keep the second part. So up to, including the or, I guess, would have to come out to make it a grammatical, removal of the clause. So an improved college or dual enrollment course would stay in. because that's what they would be teaching. If you're just limiting it to that approved college or dual enrollment course,
No. He
I mean, that's what I just heard.
he suggested an amendment was to change the letter D,
Yeah.
David, not B.
Yes, I said D. Sorry, was I not close enough to the microphone?
Okay.
I apologize.
That's
Also, spring allergies.
I see no other questions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Patrick Coates? And again, if you have something totally new to say, that would be great. Thank you.
My name is Patrick Pete. I am the president at Lake Region Community College. I apologize for my voice.
Could you turn on the mic? Thank you.
Spring is in the air and the allergies are as well. So I apologize for the voice. And I hope you had a chance to try some of our food last week when we were downstairs in the cafeteria. It's a very good meal. I'm here to talk a little bit about early college, and we are in support of the Ladd amendment. And I hope that from the questions that Representative Ladd, I'm hoping I can just give a quick brief overview to get an idea of what this really looks like on the ground, to be able to help inform the committee in its work. There are essentially 3 different ways that dual and concurrent enrollment courses are offered. The first used to be called Running Start. We all call them early college now. Running Start is essentially when a high school teacher who's in that high school teaches a course and they work with a faculty mentor at the community college to be able to help them have a course that meets the rigor and meets the learning objectives of the college course. And so the college course is granted that credit bearing possibility due to the outcome in the relationship with that teacher to make sure that it meets those requirements. The high school credit is granted then by the high school by looking at the same thing for their accreditation and standards. We also have online, which is a partnership with VLAX, and it's an online course that meets, again, same dual enrollment type experience with the same idea. We also have some students who will come to the community college to take one of our classes and work with their high school to get college credit for it as well in that same area. Those are the 3 primary ways, and its overwhelming majority of the courses are offered in those 3 different ways. I was the institution that worked with Franklin, so I'll speak especially about that instance. First off, I want to give Principal Levesque all the credit in the world. This conversation started way before he had a shortage. He was aware that he had a shortage. We were actually talking about how can we help better integrate opportunities for the citizens of Franklin and the students to be able to have access to community college courses. Over that summer, we met in the spring, and then over that summer, he had tried to hire a few positions and simply could not. And it was about 3 weeks before the school started, and he said, "Oh, can we come up with something so we can make this work?" And it was fortuitous, frankly, that we had already had those conversations about partnerships. And so those classes that he had a challenge in, math and science, which every institution, every high school has a hard time with. What we did was those students who may have taken it in one of those other forms, we simply offered the course on campus. And they bused to our campus. So they took it basically at our campus and received dual credit those for those students who were eligible to take that course in the first place. So this was not offered for first year students, and it didn't replace a course that wouldn't be for dual enrollment. The only faculty member that I sent to that institution was actually in a technical area. Because of the faculty who were teaching that technical area didn't meet the NECHI requirements. And so this was a way to partner up. And so the instructor of the course from the high school was in the room while my instructor was also teaching it. And it was called machine math. And we did that in a way to help get them geared up to be able to offer that course, because that's not a course that traveling made sense. And they didn't have a teacher that I could certify that would meet the minimum requirements for the accreditation at the higher education, the NECHI level that you've heard earlier. We support this because we really think that the dual and concurrent enrollment is really important to the students that we serve. It's been a focus of ours to increase that opportunity. It helps us reduce the cost of higher education for New Hampshire high school students. And further, we want to, like myself, I grew up in New Hampshire. I went to high school. I tell all of them I wasn't the best high school student. And it took somebody to show me that, hey, I actually can do college level work. And so we try to work to not just meet the students who would be taking AP classes and going on to four-year institutions regardless. We're also trying to see what can we do to get into those students so that they know that they are certainly capable of doing that work and giving them a chance to learn that. So machine math is a great example of how we can get more students to have a better education after high school simply by experiencing that type of a course. And so I will, welcome any questions. I just wanted to be able to talk a little bit about what the early college looks like on our level and where we want to do. There was a comment about, is there an agreement? These never happen without some sort of a conversation at the very least, if not a written agreement. And we do background checks in all of our faculty and whatnot. But the standards are different. We don't require that.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. When a high school student goes to one of the community colleges for a course, how is that paid for? Is it the local school that's paying for it, or?
So it varies. Sometimes a school will say, hey, we'd like to take an entire class. Can you do something? That's rare, but that's how we do it. 9 times out of 10, it really is the student coming and using either the governor's grant for dual enrollment, or they simply pay it out of pocket. Sometimes we have had students who are homeschooled who do more than the 2 courses that are in the governor's grant that's been allowed them to do that. And so it really depends on the student. But it can be sometimes covered by the school. And frankly, a lot of schools, if they do that, where they are encouraging more students to do that, they'll cover a book or something like that as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. So, in listening to your testimony, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. It was my understanding that, thank you for clarifying that Running Start now equals
Early college, yes.
early college. New name. Okay. I was familiar with Running Start. So that the way that the dual enrollment exists right now is the Running Start program.
Yep.
Students high school students who physically go to the community college to take classes.
Correct.
And the online partnership with VLAX.
Correct.
Okay. And with the example for Franklin High School, did I hear that your communication with Franklin High School began because the principal was unable to fill 3 teaching positions in math and science? Was not able
yes
to
and
hire
no.
3
Yeah, no.
teachers?
So the conversation started before that challenge was
Yeah.
arrived. So we started in the spring talking about how do we work together. He was looking at his schedule to see if there was a way that he could adjust his schedule to allow more students to do dual and current enrollment.
To go over to your campus.
Could be. We really were just trying to. It was an exploratory conversation. Over the course of that summer, that problem arose, and so it became a way to help do both. But it wasn't a solution necessarily that was sought after. It was a solution that, okay, we have to help out, and this is going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, it was a chemistry course that he really had a hard time doing, and we hosted the chemistry course in the evenings for those students who could do that, and that allowed those students to get both the dual enrollment credit. But for the general academic courses, that's the only one that we actually sent somebody there. It was more of the technical courses.
Okay, may I follow up?
Okay.
So, one of my previous questions to another person testifying was, would it not make sense to have a language in this bill that says when the high school is unable to fill that position with a certified teacher, they then engage in the program that you were able to help them out in this time of crisis? So it looks like this bill would be to offer the space for other schools experiencing Franklin who had tried to fill those roles with a certified teacher.
I would hate to speak for the high school leadership because I don't know what it means to do it sufficiently, and I would hate to do that. I know on my part, 2 weeks out is when I'd say, okay, now I'm in trouble. But I don't know that I can speak to what the process would be for hiring because I'm just not familiar with it.
Yeah.
But on our side too, I wouldn't want to necessarily. It would not be in our best interest to provide faculty that we pay out of our budget to help solve a local school district's challenge. And so I can't imagine a situation where I would be a willing participant in that, if that makes sense. But if language would go in there that would help codify that the intent of this not is to target this, but rather an opportunity, that would be up to the high schools and the schools to do so.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, Brian Hawkins. And you've heard the rules, right?
I've heard the rules. I'm gonna do my best to.
Summarize, don't repeat what we have heard. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Brian Hawkins, representing NEA New Hampshire. So I do think a lot of my points have already been raised. To one of the questions raised earlier about the debate in the House, I think the main debate was, what is the goal of the bill? Is the goal of the bill to address the specific need about dual and concurrent enrollment, or is it about sort of opening this up much more broadly? And I think that's the difference when other folks brought up some of the language here in letter D. This is very broad, we feel, and narrowing this would, I think, serve students better, because as I read D, this doesn't, limit this to high school. This doesn't have a limitation. This could be elementary school, it could be middle school. So I think that I'll focus on that. The other thing I would just say is I think that the other goal here is that we don't want the Band-Aid to become the solution. And I think this was addressed a little bit earlier, is if we're trying to solve a specific problem, I don't think this is a solution to a broader K-12 educator workforce issue. That issue has to do with paying teachers more and providing the kind of professional development and environment that helps attract and retain qualified educators. So with that, I'll make it quick and happy to take any questions.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Questions from the committee members? Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. You just brought up an example. A technical reading of this would allow elementary school, a college professor to teach in an elementary class, and I can understand what you're saying, but doesn't the local school ultimately have to agree to this? And I guess my point is, your point's well taken, but the school is ultimately, the local school, the gatekeeper of the final say.
Yeah, I think it's what the state is going to allow. Is my point, is this, and right now it is, you have several pathways for hiring educators. You obviously have the traditional route. You also have the alternative pathways that people can seek, where they're changing profession because they're going to go. They decided they're going to go into teaching, and they're receiving that kind of mentorship, professional development support from the school. But I think it's important to get the language here right. And I think, again, you want to go back to the goal of the bill, which is not just opening this up. You want to, you're seeking to solve a specific problem. So that's where I think this language is too broad.
Thank you.
Senator Altschul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On that note, if I'm hearing you correctly, the objection is really in line 12, where there are 3 ors. Where it says on 11, has expertise or significant professional experience to teach in a subject area offered by the school or district or an approved college dual or concurrent enrollment course. So it doesn't necessarily limit to high school. Is that how you're reading it? Is that what you were just referring to?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Nancy Biederman.
Okay. Hi, Nancy Biederman, New Boston. I wasn't going to testify on this, but I have some concerns about some of the language in here. Um, Particularly that there needed to be some guardrails as far as the code of conduct and ethics for educational professionals. It says that they need to practice it. There's nothing in there saying that there's going to be any training. My daughter had a situation where they brought in someone to teach Algebra 2 because they supposedly couldn't find a certified teacher. And this gentleman thought it was totally appropriate to talk about sexual stuff that he had experienced and heard about in college. That was just one of many things that he crossed the line with. I notified the principal. That gentleman still was teaching. I don't know what was done or not done. If he had gone through a teaching program such as I did 4 years of college, got my undergraduate degree in elementary education, got my master's in early childhood. We knew where the line was. Someone that has not been in the education field doesn't know where the line is. And, especially teaching high school, that is definitely an area that you can get into topics that are unacceptable. So I would appreciate if there's some guardrails put in here. And then if this person who's hired to be a teacher does break any of these rules, there's no consequences in here because they don't have a teaching credential. So nothing is going to be taken away from them. So thank you.
Are you referring to a particular area here?
Oh, sorry, line 15 and 16
Line 15,
and 16.
okay.
Part-time teachers shall practice the principles identified in the New Hampshire Code of Conduct and Ethics for Educational Professionals. And again, it should have been on the principal to be monitoring this person. And I think we have, are they doing their jobs? And are they making sure that the teachers the people that they hired to come in there are actually certified or that have knowledge and make sure that they know where the line is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
All right, I'll be back.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 90, unless there's somebody in the audience who really wants to talk to it. Seeing none, House Bill 90 is finished. The next bill we have is HB 324. And the prize sponsor is Representative Cordelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. For the record, again, Glenn Cordelli representing Tufton Borough, Wolfboro, and Ossipee in the beautiful Lakes region. House Bill 324 had a similar bill, the same bill really, defeated in the House last year, but I have brought it back again this year for several reasons. Last year, members in the House, and again this year, did not want to hear about the age inappropriate and harmful materials in the schools, but evidently felt it was okay for it being available to their children. And I'm back with this bill because the problem persists. So let's recap the legislation in front of you. Currently, our state obscenity laws exempt education. That's right. Education is exempt from obscenity laws in the state of New Hampshire. This bill removes K-12 education from that exemption. I will note that this section is in our criminal statutes, and it is doubtful that anything would raise to the level of criminal prosecution, and I've reviewed that as well with the Attorney General, so it's doubtful that anything like that would happen. However, House Bill 324 also establishes a minimum process by which parents can bring what they consider inappropriate materials to the attention of their principal and then the school board, and if necessary, to the State Board of Education. And why to the State Board of Education? Is that included in here? I've heard that question a number of times. One, because it is in statute now And you'll see that in the bill, RSA 21 and 11, Roman 3, that a parent can anytime bring an objection, an appeal to the State Board of Education. So that's currently in law. What happens, however, if the district does not adhere to the complaint process or does not adhere to the determination made by the school board or state board in relation to the material? In that case, a civil right of action is permitted for the parents. And what materials are we talking about? We're talking about books, and actually a common app on school supplied computers describing incest, sex between adults, including teachers, minor girls, rape, sexual assault, drug abuse, violence, cutting, and suicide. There's been much misinformation about this bill and really fear-mongering. Last year, we heard testimony that this would impact students and even adults wanting to learn about the culture of New Hampshire. I think if people think that this crap is culture, then we're in bad trouble in New Hampshire. Let's be honest, these explicit sexual materials have no place in our schools. I say that this is not about banning books. It is making sure that our children and your children have access to age-appropriate educational materials. So if I might, I'd like to read from just one brief section of a book called Perks of Being a Wallflower. They're in multiple schools in our state. So if there are any young children on the live stream, perhaps their parents want to mute that live stream. I quote from the book, and I'll leave certain sections out of what I'm reading.
Representative Cordelli,
Yes.
how long is this going to take?
About 1 minute.
Okay. And I'm just wondering if it is an appropriate thing?
You'll have to decide that. It's appropriate, evidently, in our schools.
Okay.
I said I didn't see why not, so they closed the door and started kissing very hard. After a few minutes, the boy's hand went up the girl's shirt and she started protesting. "Come on, Dave." "What?" "The kid's in here. It's okay." And the boy kept working up the girl's shirt, and as much as she said no, he kept working it. Pretty soon he took off her bra and started to kiss her breasts. And then he put his hand down her pants and she started moaning. I think they were both very drunk. He started to take off her pants, but she started crying really hard, so reached for his own pants. He pulled his pants down and his
Point of
underwear
order.
to his knees.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is this appropriate? And if the representative is going to bring this forward, you said that this material is in our schools. What schools? How many schools? What you've given us the name of the book, but I just take umbrage to going into that level of detail. I think you could present your case, in my opinion, without it. But that's
Well,
my opinion. You can overrule me. I just wanted to bring it up.
Right. If I might,
Finish up.
okay. Please, Dave, no. She grabbed his penis with her hands and started moving it. After a few minutes, the boy pushed the girl's head down and she started to kiss his penis. She was still crying. Finally, she stopped crying because he put his penis in her mouth. I had to stop watching at that point because I started to feel sick, but it kept going on, and they kept doing other things, and she kept saying no. Even when I covered my ears, I could still hear her saying that. I'll skip the other book that I was reading from, but I know that is in Dover High School, and there might be some people here who can testify to the other schools. I haven't researched all school libraries for it, but I know it's in multiple schools. I have also passed around materials from another book, and another representative will have a more complete package of materials to leave with you shortly. We heard testimony in the House that schools block sites containing inappropriate materials. Well, I've had several calls with the mom of a 13-year-old who was able to, on her school computer in school, access a site. It was with AI computer-generated animated figures performing sex and talking about sex. That was in school. She was a naive 13-year-old and started progressing and looking at other materials, and even then started sending pictures of herself to real men on the internet. And I believe DCYF and the police are now involved in that case, and I believe the Department of Education is investigating. Here's a novel idea. Let schools concentrate on academics and knowledge instead of sexualizing our children. Look at our reading and English scores. We're talking about banning books. If we do not teach our kids to read, all books are banned for them. So I think I'll end my testimony there in the interest of time, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to thank you for reading that little bit from The Perks of Being a Wallflower, because it is a really important piece of literature available to high school children. And what's disappointing in the way that you chose a very small snippet is that you didn't read it in context. Instead, you took a piece of the book and just tried to make it salacious. And so I'm wondering, I have two questions for you. Have you read the whole book? And are you aware that that particular book deals with situations that are absolutely universal to the high school experience, in that it talks about sexuality, it talks about drug use, it actually talks about sexual assault, where 1 in 3 women in the United States will experience sexual assault, and it talks about mental health. But I didn't hear you bring that into context. So have you read this book?
I have not read the whole book, and I have no interest in reading the whole book.
It would make more sense in
and-
context.
Right, and maybe in context too, a young boy reading this book might get ideas on how they can behave with young women.
No debate.
Sorry.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I understand you haven't read The Perks of Being a Wallflower, but is that does that book have illustration in it, or is it just a?
Yes.
Thank you.
And you'll see with the packet of materials that my colleague will provide. There are a great many. I presented a list of materials to the speaker before I gave a House speech on the floor, and he that was one of the ones he let me read. There were others he would not let me read, including books that are in middle schools.
Do you have a question? No. Okay. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. People were visibly uncomfortable when you were reading that material. Would you agree that there is no circumstance where that is acceptable for a child, because these are minors, these are children, pick up in the school library to read, where parents are unaware that they are being given this information? I mean, that's especially if a young person has been victim of sexual assault and they're reading this. Would you agree that there's no situation where that is appropriate material?
I would agree with that statement, and I'll just say that when I read something similar in the House floor last year, House members said that they were triggered because they had sexual assault instances in their life in the past. But what about high school or middle school girls? Might they be triggered also?
Senator Altshuler.
Thank you. So you just brought up, might high school girls who have experienced sexual assault be triggered? Might they also know that this is not an experience that only happened to them, and that actually they can see themselves on the page and go talk to a trusted adult to get some help? Might they see that maybe this is not a unique experience to them and be able to express that with their peers and their trusted adults?
I would hope that if they had such an experience, they would have talked to trusted adults, primarily their parents, and not need to read graphic material like this in order to think that there were other girls who had experienced the same thing.
On follow-up.
If those children are the victims of incest, shouldn't they also be able to see themselves on the page and know that they are not alone by reading them, seeing themselves reflected on the page?
I think that certainly if they were a victim of incest, they should be talking to a trusted adult, and we want to make sure that perpetrators of incest are treated properly in this society.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, we have quite a few people who would like to speak on this bill, so I'm going to have to limit each presenter to 3 minutes. The next one is Barrett Christina. The what? Did you want to say something?
I have a field trip.
You have to leave.
I'll be back in a moment.
Okay, fine. Barrett Christina.
Good morning, members of the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair Barrett Christina from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. Back again talking about provisions for school boards to have to adopt to implement a process for parents to challenge books. As I stated with both Senate Bill 33 and Senate Bill 208, the School Boards Association has no objection to the legislature adopting a law that would require school boards to implement a process to allow parents to come and raise challenges about certain books or certain materials, supplemental materials, whatever they may be in school libraries. With that said, the School Boards Association does have some concerns with House Bill 324. I will try and be brief, but there are a lot of things to discuss here. NHSBA's first concern with the language of the bill is that it talks about on page 1 the definitions of nudity and sadomasochistic abuse, sexual conduct, and so on and so forth. And then we jump to page 2 where it says, for the purposes of the subdivision of material is harmful to minors when the sexual material depicts or describes nudity, sexual conduct, or sexual excitement. In preparation for my testimony, I just did a quick Google search of Shakespeare sexual innuendos, and there are pages and pages and pages that highlight sort of hidden context, hidden innuendos throughout Shakespeare that relate to sexual conduct, human anatomy, and so on and so forth. So we're concerned that the definitions and coupling that with the language about depicting or describing nudity, sexual conduct could be read overly broadly to prohibit any number of literary works that use innuendo to describe these sorts of things. Second, NHSBA objects to the penalty that's included in the latter pages, the civil penalty. I believe it's on page 3 and on to page 4. When introducing this bill, Representative Cordelli said that there's no recourse for parents if the school board or the school district does not follow the process. The remedy for failed process is that the individual gets the process. They don't get monetary damages. We're talking about a due process standard and due process is somehow fouled up or the statute is not followed, the remedy is that the aggrieved individual gets the appropriate process, not money. Second of all, NHSBA would disagree with the assertion that RSA 21-N:11 gives parents an automatic appeal right to the State Board of Education. It's also so NHSBA objects to the provisions in the bill that would grant an appeal right to the State Board of Education if a parent did not like the decision from the local school district. And there are a couple reasons that we object to that. First of all, if we look
Time
to
is up. Could you summarize the rest? I'm sorry.
I'll try and follow up with written comments. This, I understand the committee's time crunch. This cannot be handled in 3 minutes by myself or anybody else. This is a significant bill that's going to impact thousands of kids, hundreds of school boards, hundreds of school board members, thousands of parents. I would respectfully ask that,
I appreciate your comment. Once you finish up.
So I'll follow up with further written comments. But to conclude, again, we don't have a problem with the process. Senate Bill 33 we think is workable. The amendment the School Boards Association provided to this committee when Senate Bill 33 and Senate Bill 208 we think are constitutional, reasonable for parents, and more appropriate than House Bill 324. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions? Thank you. If there is none right now. Senator Altshuler.
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I was quickly trying to write down some of the objections, and I got to the spots where were talking about enforcement and penalties.
Correct.
And then you mentioned another RSA, and I didn't catch that.
Sure. Thank you.
So could you finish that?
21-N:11, paragraph 3. There is some interpretation that statute gives parents an automatic right of appeal to the State Board of Education if they don't like their decision from the local school district. The School Boards Association would disagree with that broad interpretation of the statute.
Okay, may I follow up?
Follow up.
So going back to what you were talking about with enforcements and penalties, which I believe is on page 3, starting on line 27.
Correct.
There was, could you expound upon, was it the civil action that was giving the School Boards Association some heartburn, or where was that?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator. So it says either the Attorney General, Department of Education, or any person claiming to be aggrieved by a violation of RSA 189:79 or RSA 189:80 may initiate a civil action against a school district. An individual may be aggrieved by a violation of RSA 189:79, i.e. the process, the 189:80, the complaint process about number of days and the complaints being written. So if a school district even inadvertently fouled up the process, they missed the deadline by a weekend or by 2 days, or they didn't allow the parent to submit this document or that document, that would be a violation of process. I don't know why the remedy for a violation of process is to redo the process to make sure you get the process accordingly, not to automatically give somebody monetary damages because you missed a deadline by a day or a weekend, or you forgot to send an email, or whatever the inadvertent violation may be.
Last follow-up, Madam Chair?
One follow-up.
Is there any other space in academic statutes that offer that civil action, or is what you're talking about, the remedy to a violation of process is to fix the violation and get back on track?
Thank you for the question, Representative. Yes, I believe it was in 2001, the New Hampshire legislature and ultimately Governor Sununu signed it. There's a private right of action under the bullying statute. I forget what the language is. It's a very high standard. It has to be recklessness or something along those lines. So if the school district recklessly, I'm guessing that's what the word was, messed up that process, the parent would have an avenue to, I believe, file in Superior Court. That was a very high standard, though, that was included in that in that private right of action that was introduced. I believe it was 2021.
So this would be right under that, really?
I believe
like as a next.
Correct. This doesn't give any, this just says any violation, whether or not it was knowingly or unintentionally. Any violation would give an individual a cause of action.
And $1,000.
Correct, for a mere mistake.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Christine Noble. And try to limit yourself to 3 minutes.
I'm late for session, so I will be brief.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Kristen Noble. I represent Hillsborough District 2, the town of Bedford. Last week, the FBI put out a video warning parents of yet another way that kids were being targeted online. They advised parents to spot check to see what their kids are looking at online and to have conversations with them about their online friends and what they're sharing. I immediately thought of the book, Let's Talk About It. This book, which is in public high school libraries, encourages the reader to watch porn. And it says, a great place to research fantasies and kinks safely is on the internet. It also says there are tons of people and communities out there who share your interests and have all kinds of advice. I'm sure they do. It also encourages texting dirty pictures and sticking things up your bum. This book isn't just inappropriate, it's dangerous and it's grooming. Another book called This Book is Gay is in many high schools, but I found it in one middle school. It describes anal sex, oral sex, how to use sex apps. It defines golden showers, glory holes, rimming, scat, strap-ons, just to name a few. And here's a quote from this book. If you're that horny that you want to do a sex meet the trick in a public place for a drink first. This book is for kids. It is often said that kids need to see themselves reflected in the books they read. They don't need to see themselves giving or receiving oral sex. They don't need to see themselves in sexual positions. They don't need to see themselves having a threesome or being tied up. That's in the package that I will give you. Defending these books reflects very poorly on public schools. I don't understand when we decided we were going to stop protecting the innocence of minors. So I have this package for you. It has several books. It has the schools that they're in, but just know it doesn't mean that they're only in those schools. It's just where they were found. I have literally not searched every library. That would take me forever. It also, you'll see on the printouts that there's a number at the bottom. It's a book rating, and there's a thing in here that describes what that book rating is. So I heard that there was the argument of context. This book rating looks at the books as a whole, not just like snippets, to decide whether it is appropriate for minors or not. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Please
very
look at this stuff that I'm leaving with you.
Sharon Silva.
My name is Sharon Silva, and I would like to state that I'm here in opposition of House Bill 324 on behalf of the many school librarians who can't be here today because they need to be with their students and teachers. This bill should be voted inexpedient to legislate, as indicated in the letter that has been sent by the New Hampshire Library Association. I believe it's been received already. My
Excuse me,
background.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you just move the microphone closer? to
Oh,
you?
I'm sorry.
Not the news one, the one with the red light.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank
oh
you.
yeah, that's, we don't need that. Sorry about that. My background is that I'm a retired educator. Having been certified as a library media specialist and digital learning specialist, and I've also been very, very involved with the New Hampshire School Library Association. I'm a past president. I was a librarian of the year in 2011. I also was very much involved with bringing a certification program for school library media specialists to Plymouth State University. And I was an adjunct professor in that program. I know that I need to keep this brief, and I'll toss my notes over to somebody when I'm done. I strongly think that this, well, let me get to, hold on a second. To me, it appears to be a free-for-all bill that's distributed by special interest groups and undermining local authority. School boards, superintendents, principals, there's policies in places for dealing with these types of books, with any book that a parent finds objectionable. The policies work. In my experience, very few parents ever have come forward to go through the final trying to remove a book. In all my years that I was a school librarian, half a dozen times I talked with parents, and we talked about the value of the book and what they didn't like about the book. And we talked about, well, if it's not appropriate for your student, that's fine. But it might be very appropriate for another student. Only one time did I...
You have 30 seconds left.
Okay, one time I had a parent that asked to go through the whole process, filling out the form. He had not read the book. We had a conversation with him. A group of us met with him. The next day, he thanked us for being so much involved with his student and brought us donuts and coffee.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Questions?
Who am I giving this?
Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Will you take questions? Ms. Silva, will you take
I will
questions?
certainly. Sorry,
No worries.
I'm trying to rush away.
As past president of the New Hampshire School Librarians, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you involved in helping craft policies for school libraries to be able to present to their school boards about how they would curate and collect and maintain collections and address objections?
I was more likely to, typically it was a school board, well, administrators would bring something to the school board, and yes, I've been known to review them.
Yeah.
In part of my work with Plymouth State and in training future school library media specialists, there was extensive training in that, in book selection and blah, blah, blah.
Follow up?
One follow-up.
So it's my understanding that, library media specialists are highly trained and
Highly
have
trained.
have degrees in this particular avenue. And did I hear you correctly that developing a policy for the collection, curation, and maintenance and possible objections of any materials in a school library is at the local level? It's a local control issue, correct?
It is a local control issue, and that's one of the big issues I have with this particular bill, that it's taking away the local control.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did you have a question? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Bellamy Reidinger.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity and for the work you do. I'm here today as a citizen of New Hampshire. I'm from Hopkinton.
Just state your name.
Bellamy Rittinger. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm asking you to oppose HB 324, a book ban proposed in the name of protecting kids. It's not the first time that legislation has been proposed to try to control libraries and to try to control books, try to control what kids are exposed to. I thought the example that Senator Cordelli brought up was interesting, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I have actually read it. It's a Nobel Prize award-winning book. Something I think he fails to understand is that often it is in the library and in books when we're exposed to things that make us uncomfortable, things that we realize are wrong. That's often our first avenue to getting help. And maybe if you are a victim of rape or incest, that often comes from somebody you know. In fact, statistically, you're more likely to be raped by somebody you know, and obviously with incest, it's in the family. So books are often our first avenue to realizing we are able to go somewhere else, this is wrong, and we have somebody else to reach for, a safe person to talk to. I'm going to try to get back to my notes and keep this brief. I'm also here as a member of the LGBT community. Book bans are historically used to discriminate against my community and to discriminate against LGBT youth. Transgender people make up less than 1% of the population in the United States, And yet we are enduring an assault of discriminatory laws across the country. We're the smallest kid on the playground, and those in favors of bills like this are our bullies, because it's up to parents in the community, often the most extreme, who encounter material in books that they feel is inappropriate for their children. And for some reason, they often feel that LGBT stuff is inappropriate, even though LGBT kids experience everything other kids do. They want to just experience life and growing up. I also think it's interesting, I'm totally off notes now, but I think it's interesting that the desire to totally wash the palate clean of what children are exposed to until they reach 18, and then expect them to be informed members of our collection, of our society. If you haven't been exposed to ideas, how are you supposed to know what you think about them?
One more minute.
Thank you. The beauty of having a mind and learning to use it is being exposed to ideas, to stories, to perspectives, finding community, kinship, and finding things you disagree with too. Learning to express yourself and explain yourself is a place that happens in school libraries. And I believe it is the duty of our lawmakers not to serve extreme parents, but to serve our most vulnerable communities, our students, to serve our school libraries as places for free thought, for places of learning, expression. Let's see. By stripping away books with book bans, lawmakers strip the opportunities for young minds to strengthen. Bills like this provide opportunities for parents to make choices not just for their children, but for everybody's children, should they decide a book is inappropriate. Thank you for the time.
A quick summary, like 2 lines.
Yeah, 2 lines. I'm asking you as a constituent, and someone who grew up in this beautiful state, someone who's educated in public school, where I learned to speak for myself, think critically, and advocate for those with less power than me. All of those reasons are reasons that our school libraries are under assault right now. And so I'm asking you at a time when authoritarianism is on the rise, when freedom of thought is being policed in our federal government, I'm asking you to defend schools, to defend children, and to oppose House Bill 324, and to stand up for vulnerable communities.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Deborah House. Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes. Good morning, Senator Ward, members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Deborah Howes. I am president of the American Federation of Teachers, and I am here to oppose House Bill 324. I think I agree with the sponsors of this bill that we should have clear and understandable library collection policies about how they decide what books go into the collection, and how parents and guardians and students can object to what's there and ask for a book to be removed. That is something that we all agree on. But we also have to make sure that those policies are constitutional. And that's where we find this bill is lacking, and we would urge you to find it expedient to legislate. Students have a First Amendment right to access a wide variety of materials in their school library. So that's where this bill falls down. It does not respect the rights of students to have access to a lot of different materials. In setting up the definition of what is considered harmful to minors, it does not require that in objecting to a book, the book be considered in its, or material be considered in its entirety by a local committee. So you don't have to read the whole book, you don't have to view the whole work and consider all of it. You can just look at the most salacious part, similar to the passage we heard read earlier. You know, there could be upsetting things in any work. That is not a fair representation of whether there is any value to the whole work or any value to one student. And by the way, a book doesn't have to be for every single student. If it is valuable for one student, it has a place in the library. That is a Supreme Court decision, U.S. Supreme Court.
1 more minute.
1 more minute. Okay. So the policy, as described under this bill, you could have a policy where you have one decision maker. It could be the principal who decides whether a book stays or go. That would be allowable under this. That does not meet constitutional muster. You also have the appeal to the State Board of Education. That is not the opinion of the local community. And that is important to be constitutional. It has to be the local community. So appointed officials in Concord are not your local community. We also have clear recent polling from across the state of New Hampshire that they do not want to see school employees, school librarians, teachers criminally punished for materials that are in school. They think that is going way too far. They also want to see local control over this because it is the local community standards that prevail. And your local elected school board should be the ones making the decision on what the policy is, and reconsideration should be done by a community involvement. So your local teachers, your local school board members, local parents should be getting together in a group and considering the work as a whole. That's how we protect the constitutional rights of everyone involved.
Your time is up. You did well.
Yay. Okay, and I will not be
Any
taking questions.
Senator Sullivan.
No, I will not be taking questions. Thank you.
Katie DeAngelis. Is there a Katie DeAngelis in here? I don't know if you've heard what we've been talking about, but we have rules, 3 minutes
Yeah.
for your testimony.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Katie DeAngelis. I'm a resident of Nottingham, New Hampshire, and I'm here today to urge you to oppose HB 324. I'm a lifelong Granite Stater, a product of our public schools, and now a parent to 2 children attending those same schools. And I'm also the survivor of childhood sexual assault. Sorry, it's always hard to be this vulnerable in front of strangers, even though I'm sure all wonderful people. When I was 6 years old, I experienced a traumatic event at the hands of a family member. And it was an event that I didn't truly understand for many years. And like many survivors, I carried a deep shame and confusion well into adolescence. One of the few ways that I was able to begin processing what had happened to me was through reading, through books that told stories of other young people who had gone through something similar to what I had gone through. Books like Speak by Laurie Anderson, Push by Sapphire, Lucky by Alice Sebold, Sold by Patricia McCormick, and The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. These books didn't glorify obscenity. They didn't corrupt me or harm me. They helped me feel seen. They gave me language for experiences, thank you, that I couldn't talk about yet. They offered healing. Without them, I honestly don't know how I would have coped.
You have 1 more minute.
I share my story because HB 324 could result in these stories being removed from school libraries or worse, criminalized. Criminalizing the educators and librarians who make them available. And I know that sounds dramatic, but in reading the bill, the language is vague enough to be weaponized.
It relies on subjective standards of what is harmful, and it opens the door to censorship based on individual discomfort and not professional judgment. Let's be clear, parents already have the right to review materials and opt their children out of content they find objectionable, and I emailed you actually the policy from our school for you to review, and that's appropriate and necessary. But what one family finds inappropriate should not dictate what every child has access to in a public school.
Your
And-
time is up.
I just want to say, I know this is a tough issue and we want to protect our kids. I want to protect my children. But I can testify firsthand that living through these events is a million times more difficult than reading them. So I'm going to ask you to please vote no on HB 324 and protect the rights of our children, especially the quiet ones, the hurting ones, and the ones that are just trying to heal and find themselves in a book.
Okay, wait a minute. Any questions? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I know that was really hard and really appreciate you sharing your testimony. It's not your fault. It was never your fault.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Do you have something written down that you didn't have a chance to say?
I actually emailed it to you just because
Oh, okay.
there was a question about
fine.
whether I was going to be able to get through it
Okay,
at all.
then we
So-
have it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Kevin Gagnon. After Kevin, we have Nancy Biederman.
Have some exhibits.
There's your written testimony. Is that your written testimony?
It's just some exhibits, some visual, and
Okay, we'll take care of them.
description a book. I'd like to get it back, please.
You have 3 minutes.
Starting now.
Soon as you finish, as soon as you
All right,
get ready.
let me start the clock. Sorry about that. Good morning, Madam Chair, Senator Ward, and other senators. My name is Kevin Gagnon. I'm from Salem, New Hampshire. I'm a widowed stay-at-home parent of 2 lovely children in the public school community, SAU 57. And I am here in support of House Bill 324. In the fall of 2021, I discovered a story of a parent verbalizing the words and details of an obscene book, readily available to minor students in front of her local school board in another state. Her description of the contents of the book was so graphic and vulgar that the board asked her to stop speaking and was told there are children at the meeting Seems that her point was made. Pornography is not education. I immediately wondered, could obscene materials be here in Salem, New Hampshire schools and libraries? You know, and throughout New Hampshire, of course. And essentially, I found out that was true. So I with 3 minutes, I'm not going to be able to get through all this, so I'm going to just kind of breeze through here. So in case you're wondering why I put the bag up here facing you guys, that's just to show you all the documentation that I've been personally working on in my spare time regarding this topic, okay? I did the right thing. I started with the librarians, okay? What I just shared with you. I simply called and I explained my name respectfully, and I was hung up on when I asked if Lawn Boy, this book right here that you guys just took a brief look at, I was hung up on. I said, okay, something's weird here. So then I went to the principal, got nowhere, superintendent, got nowhere, and then I went to the school board to speak, not once, but twice. Fast forward a couple, 2-3 years later, I had enough because my concerns have not been the school board's concerns.
1
okay?
minute left.
Thank you. And so I removed my son from the school, brought him to a charter school, and now I'm about to remove him from the school like once again because I'm just finding more of the same. And I would just add that this has nothing to do with banning books. It has everything to do with keeping immoral, sexually explicit materials out of our schools. All right. Again, thank you. Pornography is not education. Our standards are very low, just like the rest of the 49 states here in this union. We need to focus on education, not sexualizing our children. So therefore, once again, I respectfully ask you guys all to vote yes on HB 324.
324. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Oh,
Could you-
perfect. I love
Senator
questions.
Sullivan.
I love it. Bring it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So would you agree that we have safeguards? We've heard a lot about children and that their First Amendment rights. Would you believe we have safeguards for children throughout our society? Some of the things that we've heard today, if they were in film version, do you agree that children would not be allowed to see them? They would not be allowed to enter the movie theater with
Absolutely.
that content?
When my kids ask to go to the movies, first question out of my mouth as a responsible parent is, what is it rated? If it's PG, maybe. If it's PG-13, of course you can. You're 14, right? But if it's R, no way. If it's X, forget it. And thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. Matter of fact, why is it that we Americans, and in this case, Granite Staters, why don't we come up with some solution to this issue, right? So that everybody can be happy. If you need a special section of the library to cater to the problems that you had as a child, that I feel sorry for those people that, you know, are getting emotional here today. So on that point, when I was a child, I'd go to the video store a long time ago. And guess what I had to do? I had to ask my parents' permission to get anything, number one. And if there was an inappropriate video cassette, a VHS, it was behind a curtain, right? So that I couldn't access it. It was keeping me safe, safeguarding a minor. That's what this is about. This isn't about banning books, because guess what? Those VHS cassettes, they remained behind that black curtain. If you really wanted your child to see it, no problem. Just go rent it for them. Same thing is true with library materials, and we haven't even focused on digital issues, all right? And I know someone here today that's going to cover that, and I look forward to hearing from her. So when it comes to electronic issues, I brought this to the board, SAU 57. They seem to think everything's great with the IT department. Well, guess what? I'm a school teacher. I taught, and I dealt with the IT department. They barely have enough time to get your friggin' the viruses out of your computer. They don't have time to be making sure that everything's locked, barrel safe. It's not. And again, you're gonna hear about that today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gagnon, for taking my question. I hear that in your testimony and from what you passed around that you have some objections to a particular book, Lawn Boy. That seems to be what spurred your activism in this realm. And if you don't want your children to be reading that particular book. Why should your objection to that book as a parent supersede anybody else's decisions for their children to be able to access that book?
Why? I'll tell you why. That book includes pedophilia. Is it okay? Is pedophilia okay for you, Senator Altschuler? Do you agree with pedophilia? Is that okay? May I ask you a question?
No.
Is pedophilia okay?
Let's not have a debate, okay? You asked the question.
I answered it.
I did.
Yes or no? A very short answer. We don't have to go explain everything.
I already
I
answered it.
appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Did you have another question, Solomon?
No.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Any other questions? No. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Nancy Biederman.
Hi, I'm back.
You are back and you have 3 minutes. And
I'm
that's
going to
it.
go as fast as I can. I have a whole packet here for you. I'm going to give you the perspective of a parent who did challenge 2 books at her child's high school library. Not all school districts have a library instructional material policy, IJL, and then there's IJL/R, which tells you what you can and cannot do through the policy. And so according to the policy, the first thing I needed to do was contact the principal. I started this whole process January 30th, 2024. And I met with him and other teachers to discuss 2 books. It was 3 books. One of them I ended up dropping from consideration. I considered these 2 books to be harmful to minors, and that is from the definition from New York penal law upheld by Ginsburg versus New York, 1968, and 48 U.S. Code 231. After I met with the school personnel and I explained to them that I was going to test out RSA 571-B because I have been told by numerous educators or legislators in the Education Commission in the House that that law would protect my children from harmful materials in the school, especially pornographic images and books. I don't find that to be true. And then, so after I met with the principal, I filled out the proper forms and their whole committee met. By March 20th, so we're going from January all the way down to March 20th, I finally got a reply back. And there are restrictions and timelines for the principal and the committee to respond back. The principal and the committee said that these books were proper. Mainly they posted that they had a bunch of awards. I like to say that R-rated movies also get a bunch of awards. They shouldn't be shown to minors. So then the next step for me to do was
1 more minute.
to go to the superintendent. There are no policy restrictions as to when the superintendent had to respond. He finally responded to me August 21st. These 2 books with pornographic images, I have the images here for you, that are not appropriate.
No showing of the thing. Thank you. No.
So finally, on August 20th, he replied back that these books were being removed not because of RSA 571-B or that they were pornographic, but because of low circulation. That is not acceptable. So I didn't have to go to my school board because the books were removed. But again, RSA 571-B did not work. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you very
questions?
much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, and I will hand
Betsy
in.
Harrigan. Betsy Harrigan.
Oh, are you right behind me? Okay, I don't want to hit you.
am Betsy Harrington from Deering. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm a mother of 2 boys in public high school. I was also a sex offender counselor at our state prison for many years. When my son brought me pictures of inappropriate library content from someone else's school Chromebook, I thought that I could sort it out better than most. What I found was not okay. It's well beyond the boundaries of common people. It's highly sexual and totally age inappropriate for K through 12. Some publishers and librarians have overstepped and brought in adult content to libraries only for kids. I guess we have to ask ourselves, are we going to present adult content to kids? Do we want more books or the best books in our libraries? I'm noticing school libraries don't do much cultivation. They think more is better. Better books are better. Choosing the best is what I want for my kids. I don't want their promoted content to be highly sexual. I want it to be relevant information. What should my kids be browsing? Well, let's put that in front of them, not this sexual promoted content. What I did find was blowjob lessons, hyperlinking children to adult dating sites, and a book that teaches children how to use sex apps. I found content creators embedding their own Instagram account links into their most sexual books so children can literally talk to them within 1 click. The pictures and words I saw were beyond my comprehension as to why they would be accessible to children. I saw boundaries broken. Clearly, this bill is necessary. I wish it wasn't. I don't believe it's meant to hurt anyone or erase anyone. I see its purpose to protect children from obscene content. It's there, and it's time. I'm happy to show anyone who wants to see it. I have my son's Sora account on my phone right here now, so we can search any book you want, so we could talk about it. We could search Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. That was the book that my son read out loud, got sent to the principal for reading out loud. The message and visuals to this are unbelievable and age inappropriate.
1 more minute.
I'm ready to show anyone. Consideration is not actually being given to remove books locally. Children are being opted out of the library by the school. That's what they did. They banned my children from using the library. They did not remove any books. They banned my children. That was the easiest way. They said, we're going to opt your children out for you. My children have not been able to use their school library in 4 years. 4 years. My son was in middle school. He's now nearing graduation. So, and I brought up the book Flamer. That was the first book I brought up. It's since been removed. And I want you to know that This Book is Gay was removed from Sora this week. I literally had to make FCC complaints and go beyond because of the hyperlink linking kids to sex apps where it teaches kids how to use sex apps. What do you call that? It's sex trafficking through our school books. I don't think that helps any victims. Please ask me
Your time
questions.
is up.
Please ask to look afterwards. Yes, ma'am.
I said, your time is up. Just hang on. Senator Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much. So we heard emotional testimony, and my heart breaks for anybody that has been through anything like that. But that the book helped her to be seen. The opposite of that, would you agree? The opposite of that is children who are innocent, who have not been through these circumstances, don't know these circumstances exist in the world, who read these books and are confronted by things that are horrific things that are done to children. Would you agree that that is?
So I've
Also a
been a
possibility.
licensed therapist. I worked as a sex offender counselor. I worked in foster care and adoption. I do not believe that these books are healthy for children. As a matter of fact, I think they're very traumatizing and totally age inappropriate. I think if you want to keep them available, if you were a therapist, now as a therapist, I would never refer to any of the books that we are talking about today. I'm sure we have good books that we can refer to, but not the ones we've been talking about. Those ones are trauma inducing and triggering. They're not used for counseling or to help someone see themselves. You don't want to see yourself getting raped again. That's PTSD.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. In your testimony, you referenced adult content, and I distinguish, pornography and adult content can be 2 different things. All right. So I guess what I'm asking is, I think from, the obscenity side, I understand, but some of the examples we've been provided, whether it's here in the past, may be adult content, but not quite rise to level pornography. maybe perhaps maybe adult content, come up with some definition of that be helpful in improving this? Or is that what you, I'm not sure if that's what you meant when you said adult content.
So it's all of it. It's pornography, it's adult content. To me, the key words are age inappropriate content. Should it be given to children, right? People under 18. I don't think so. I think it becomes obscene. So for example, adult books are in libraries. So Kearsarge High School, they had a deliberative session the other day about money, and they put people in the library for overflow. And a parent pulled out a book, and it was from the Saga series. Saga series is a graphic comic for adults only. She opened it to a scene, and it was a blowjob scene, a woman giving a man a blowjob with two women on the sides sucking his fingers from the sides, with this other woman head down between his knees, his legs open, giving him a blowjob. The writer of the graphic comic says it's only for adults. How it ended up in a children's library, I don't know. But that's pornography. Age inappropriate content is what I'm talking about. Some of it's in words, some of it's in pictures. But we need to set the boundaries. When I tried to set it, they just banned my kids. That's not a solution. So we need this.
If I can ask one follow-up.
Quick one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the examples, and I don't believe you were in the room when it was referenced by the representative who introduced the bill, but in that case, I think the material he showed us, I think many may think it may be rise to adult content, but it may not necessarily fall under pornography. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at here is it really that it's just, if you made a movie out of that, it would probably be rated R. And that would be adult content.
XXX. We're talking about blowjobs and orgies.
I think your example, yes, but I'm just saying there's some scenarios where I think it's adult content, but it may fall out of the definition of pornography. So I'm wondering if we should be focusing really on adult content as well.
I think the words in the bill are obscene content, and I think that's appropriate.
Thank you.
What's that? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
The Gilles Bissonnette. Gilles Bissonnette. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just, just saying what's, yes, you can make a copy of that for the file. Yes, you get it.
So the 3-minute rule is,
Yes,
you've heard it, right?
I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Gilles Bissonnette. I'm the legal director with the ACLU of New Hampshire. And we're here in opposition to HB 324. I just want to keep my remarks short. I know there's a 3-minute cap. I haven't had the privilege to hear prior testimony, unfortunately, but I'm going to limit my comments just to a few points. I want to be very clear. I don't think our office objects to a process with respect to regulating materials that meet the definition of obscenity, which is constitutionally unprotected. But of course, the criteria set forth does need to meet those constitutional parameters, and I think that's really going to be the focus of my remarks today. I think the first point that I want to make within that, just to inform the committee, and I know I've made this point before because we've heard an earlier version of this bill, but I do think it's important that New Hampshire already has a law that's been in effect since 1976 that prevents giving minors, quote, harmful materials. And there's a series of criteria baked within that, and that's RSA 571B. And so given the existence of that law, which is fleshed out in more detail on page 2 of our testimony, I think there is a concern on our end that this bill raises the prospect that its scope may ban texts in schools that go beyond that statute from the 70s. And why that's a concern is because that statute from the 70s that's been in existence again for decades comports with the Constitution. So if we're trying to do something more than that, I think that is when there's real fear from our perspective that's swept within the scope of this new regime could be protected materials. So I just wanted to articulate that perspective. And lastly, or I think my second point is that the text itself of HB 324 in several ways I think does go beyond constitutional parameters.
One more minute.
Oh my gosh, time does fly. I'll just make 2 points on that. First is that it's expansive insofar as it encompasses, quote, nudity and sexual excitement under the bill, and that's beyond the limited sexual conduct that is specified in current law. And I think that expansion does go beyond constitutional principles, and I convey that in our written testimony. The other point textually they want to make that I think does raise a concern is that this does seem to exceed the kind of community standards criteria that exists in Miller. And it does so by giving not just local communities control, and local communities should have control, right? That is the standard. But it goes one step further in giving the State Board of Education the ability to dictate. And I think that is a problem. I think that is a real concern because the principles here baked into that are local community standards. Lastly, I want to just articulate, and I don't know if it's been discussed much, is the expansion of criminal liability under the criminal obscenity statute, which we kind of sometimes get lost because we focus on the state criteria. That to me is a real concern. I would note that doesn't just impact public schools, that impacts private schools too, because just given the definitions of higher education in the statute. So I think that is a real concern. I think at the very least, I think it's somewhat off topic, and I would just remove that altogether. I don't think that is a road, at least I wouldn't recommend a road that the legislature go
up.
down. And with that, I'll conclude my testimony, Madam Chair.
Senator Altshuler with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I'm looking at your testimony on page 2. And so we heard testimony a couple of times today, people mentioning a particular book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And I'm wondering how, if we were to apply your, the bit you have from, we were to look at RSA 571B2, Part B, any book, pamphlet, magazine, printed matter, however reproduced or sound recording, which contains any matter enumerated in RSA 571B2, 1A, or explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual conduct, and which taken as a whole is harmful to minors. So we heard an excerpt out of the book Perks of Being a Wallflower, and so in evaluating the application of RSA 571B, is it appropriate to take a segment out of a book, or do we need to take it as a whole, take it in context? How would that apply to the book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower?
I could tell you that book, but with respect to any book, key to the constitutional analysis is in evaluating whether there's literary value to the work, is looking at it holistically, looking at it contextually, and that is emanated in case law, and that's where the taken as a whole language comes from. So the taken as a whole language in 571B1 is designed to memorialize constitutional standards and reflect that very point, which is that when a community is making that decision, that it looks at it contextually and holistically.
May I follow up?
One more follow-up.
There we are. Is that on? Okay, so you just referenced the community. So are you talking about leaving the decisions about content curation, acquisition, and objections to pulling it out of the collection to the local level, at the local level? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that is. And I think, when we are looking at the standards, I think they should be consistent with local community standards because every community is different, right? When you apply these principles. And one of the underlying concerns and fears that I have is the last part of this kind of process under this gives the State Board of Education that authority. And I think that that kind of then removes the community component to it in ways that I just think is a concern. No objection to under constitutional standards, communities having guidelines and rules. But I think when you kind of then have a final decision maker be a state agent that may not be accountable to that local community or even know that local community in a robust way, I do think that is something of concern. I would recommend that piece be removed.
Thank you. We need to move on. Do you have a very quick question?
I'll ask them all.
Sure.
Okay.
Senator, we call me anytime.
I know you mean that anytime.
I will, absolutely.
We're way behind here. So
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you,
do
members of the
appreciate
committee.
it. We have two more, Linz Jacob, and Michaela Demeter. And a 3-minute rule.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Linz Jakehouse. I am the founder of 603 Equality, New Hampshire statewide LGBTQ plus advocacy group, and I strongly oppose HB 324. In my town of Dover at the end of 2023, a small handful of loud individuals testified in favor of Dover schools banning a book, Boy Toy, about the sexual assault of a teenage boy by an older woman. The book banners took the sexual scenes completely out of context, while many more residents who had read the book, including many who were survivors of sexual assault themselves, shared powerful stories about access to those materials being important for young people who had gone through a horrible experience or were seeking to understand something a friend had gone through. While these books may not be helpful for every young person, they are certainly helpful for some. The book's author, Barry Liga, submitted emailed correspondence to the Dover School District that was read into the record by a school board member. Quote, "The book is based on in-depth research," Liga wrote in part. "It was based on discussion with abuse survivors and law enforcement officials. Porter claims that there is no value to this book. I have received communication over the years from teens who have told me how helpful the book was to them and understanding their own abuse or that of a peer." End quote. And for students who are surprised by content or don't find it helpful, they can put down the book at any time. And while any parent can also say a book is not right for their child, they don't have the right to ban a book for all students in the state and to use the state government to do so. I am particularly appalled that this bill would criminalize New Hampshire's K-12 educators, school librarians, and members of school boards. March 2025 Granite State poll results show that 56% of Granite Staters want to see policies about reading materials made locally and strongly oppose HB 324's threat of criminal penalties against educators and school board members. There are real problems in the state, like a lack of affordable housing and towns that are forced to raise property taxes just to keep public schools afloat. It is a complete waste of time to spend money and time charging teachers and librarians with crimes about textbooks, art books, or library books. We should be supporting our educators and librarians, not prosecuting them and making their lives harder. School boards and school libraries already have processes for challenging materials on the local level and do not need this broad overreach by the state. Criminal and civil penalties against educators and school board members over approved books and instructional materials have no place in the Live Free or Die state. I'll email this testimony to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Now, Michaela Demeter.
Very sorry to keep you all waiting. Good morning, members of the Education Committee.
No more than 3 minutes.
Perfect,
As
thank
long
you.
as you know that.
My name is Michaela Demeter. I am a member of the Dover School Board, and I sit on the policy committee of the Dover School Board. And I'm here today to speak not on behalf of the entire Dover School Board, but to just represent the experiences that I had over the past 2 years as our school board considered how we as a district would respond to when individuals brought book challenges to our district. And so, sorry, I'm out of breath. I ran. So I wanted to come here because I think there is a prevailing narrative that that when we are challenging books or when we are eliminating books from circulation or collection, that it is impinging on the rights of certain people. And I'm not here at all to talk about that today. I think other people who have spoken before me have represented their perspectives, their experiences very well. What I'm here to talk about is the boring work of policy development. I think I mentioned, on the Policy Review Committee. And so I want to talk about and take you through the process that Dover went through in 2023 when we had 9 different book challenges brought to our district. And so I printed out some copies of them for you. I think it's helpful sometimes to see the work that has gone through. I do have 2 copies of the policy. I apologize I didn't print out everything, but I will
probably
hand
print them
these.
out.
What was that?
We can print them out.
Yeah, sure. So I'll hand that to you. What is going around is 4 different documents. There are 2 copies of our actual policy, KEC, and then we have a kind of a landing page, if you will, that gives people a lay of the procedure. We have the policy itself, and then associated with the policy are 2 different forms that people fill out. And I highlighted on the top, they're nearly identical, but the ones that have the pink and the green highlighting, those are for fiction and nonfiction challenges. And so I wanted to show you and talk today about the rigor with which the Dover School Board addressed these issues. And I come today speaking against this bill because 2 specific reasons. The first is taking away the option for local control from school districts doesn't serve our students because, as Dover is an example, we, with great vigor and with very careful consideration over the course of 8 months, developed these policies so that we could address these issues in a way that would be that would be fair to all parties, and that we would do our due diligence to make sure that we were going through the process of reviewing the material and making sure that everyone had their ability to speak and that we were consulting subject matter experts. You can see the material that I've shared with you is very, very thorough. And so I object to this bill because, as we did in Dover, other school districts have the opportunity to set these rigorous policies as well. And this is something that that I believe is happening district by district to begin with. And then the other thing that I had wanted to mention is just that I object to the idea that after a school board has had their final say in the elevation of a book challenge, I object to the idea that the Department of Education or the Education Commissioner would then have the ability to usurp that. That takes away the option for local control. I think it's so important that we give our locally elected school board members the opportunity to have that jurisdiction over their local districts. And so for those 2 reasons, I oppose this bill, and I'm very happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, your time is up, that's fine. I have a question on what you just handed out. Are there 5 or 4 different scenarios?
There are 2 different forms that you can fill out. So the 4
I'm
documents.
just looking if we're going to print them out so that each one of the committee members could have a copy.
Oh, sure, yeah.
they-
So what you're going to want to print out is Form KEC. That's the governing policy that helps us move through the whole process. And then you're going to want to print out the 2 different forms. There's KEC-R1, that's for fiction material, and then KEC-R2, that's for nonfiction material.
Okay.
The burden of proof is slightly different for fiction versus nonfiction, and we wanted to make sure that we had that distinction.
Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Ward. Do you have electronic copies of these or the links you could send to the committee?
Yeah, I'm
And
happy to do that.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all available online
Perfect.
through our policy section on our
Yeah, just
website.
if you could direct those to the entire committee.
I'm happy to
would
do
be
that.
great.
Yep.
She can send it to me. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Senator Altschuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So you're an elected member of the school board?
I am. I'm serving my second term. I'm 4 years in.
Okay, so I think I heard you say that as an elected member of the school board on the policy committee,
I also sit on the policy committee. Yes.
you put together a policy to deal with objections, correct? Or was the policy in place when the objections came in and you executed said policy?
Both, actually. So policy KEC, I believe, is a required policy. We had used the boilerplate language from the New Hampshire School Board Association. It was about a half a page long. It detailed the procedure in not that much detail because it was only half a page long. And as we started moving through that process, what we realized is that we needed to be significantly more specific. One of the pieces of feedback we heard from the complainants was that there was a lack of specificity about what happened first and next and after that and how long everything should take. And so we took that feedback into mind and we built out the policy to build in the expectations that when something is submitted, you can expect that within X number of days, you will get a response. And you can expect that in that interim time, these specific things are happening behind the scenes so that the charge can be taken seriously and thoroughly investigated. So the timeline is longer than I think some people would want, because as a member of the committee that reviewed the book, in our case it was the book Boy Toy, it was 400 or 500 pages long. We all had to read it. We all had to digest it. We had to think about it. But prior to that, our district had assembled an advisory committee made up of teachers and parents and librarians and administrators. And they all had to go through and read the book, and they had multiple meetings about it. And all of that process just takes a long time. So that's why we expanded the language from half a page to 4 full pages, because we wanted to be thoughtful about making sure that anyone who approached that situation would have a clear lay of the land and a clear understanding of what they could expect going forward.
May I follow up? May I follow up?
It's a very short one because we have 3 more bills in half an hour. So
So I hear that I was at my own school board meeting last night, and in developing policy, I'm hearing that the Dover School Board used some templates that were provided by the School Board Association. But then, if I'm understanding you correctly, at the local level, you folded in local school librarians, teachers, and electeds within the community to make a decision about what was best for the community and how to develop this policy best for Dover.
Yep, absolutely. And I would say, comparing the suggested language and what we had in place since 2019, I believe, was when it was first adopted, until we changed it in 2023, our policy is significantly more robust. It is tailored to the mechanics of our school district. It is tailored to the needs of our community. It is tailored to the feedback we received from the people who were bringing the charges against the school, well, against the book, not against the school district. And I would say it provides a much better experience for someone who is bringing the charges forward. But that was possible because we made that decision locally. And so that's what I take issue with in this bill.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
This concludes the hearing on House Bill 324. Now we have 3 more bills and we have a very limited time to finish them. So I would appreciate short introductions, short questions, short answers. House Bill 741.
I was going to do some.
Senator, the House is starting to take votes, so state reps may be in and out for the next few minutes.
Say that again?
the House is taking it already in the voting mode.
Okay.
On a few bills, so state reps may or may not be available
Okay.
for the next few bills.
Okay.
All set? Thank you. Glenn Cordelli, and I'll be one of the representatives running back and forth. And I represent Tufton Borough, Wolfboro, and Ossipee in the beautiful Lakes region. 741, you could refer to as a bill for public school choice. We hear that public schools are open to all students, but that's not true. We practice zip code discrimination when it comes to public schools that children can attend. We build walls around public school districts. There have been people in this country sent to jail for using a relative's address to get their child into a better school. I've read of a Rochester, New York mom who gave up her parental rights to her parents so that her child could go to the school where her parents lived. I read of a family moving to Chicago for a house that they loved, but then discovered the poor academic record of the local school district. Instead, they bought a house on the other side of the street where the school had a great academic record, but they were forced to pay $250,000 more for a house they did not like as much. How can this happen in this nation? Yet we hear of critics of public education freedom shout to keep public dollars in public schools. Well, that's what this bill does. We have an open enrollment in our statutes for public schools since 2009. HB 741 expands that law to say that every district is an open enrollment district so that those walls around districts are taken down. It updates our school attendance RSA that restricts attendance to the district where the student lives, so the only restriction is that they are a New Hampshire resident. How does this all work? Every district is to report a capacity for each grade level in each school. That is information would be available on the department website and school website probably as well. Every school will make information to parents available on their curriculum and their policies to help parents decide, is this school the right fit for my child? If a family applies to a new public school, the child can only be denied enrollment based on school capacity. The student has been expelled from their current school, or they have a history of disciplinary problems. Children of current military active duty parents cannot be denied due to capacity, which is in current law now for open enrollment. Students cannot be denied or accepted based on their needs, academic, or athletic achievement, so that we don't have one school loading up on basketball players. The new or receiving school district will not be responsible for transportation. That will be up to the parents. Funding will follow the current law. The resident or sending school district would send 80% of their average cost per pupil to the new or receiving school district. The resident school district would keep 20%, and they would be responsible for any special needs services for the children, as they would continue to receive state and federal funding for that student who is actually now in a new school. Think of the opportunities for public schools to attract students in a period of declining enrollment, especially when innovation school under law and getting out from administrative rules is available to them. The status quo is not working in many places. The education freedom that we have been talking about is not available only for private schools or homeschooling. It should be available for public schools as well, so that the child can meet have the education opportunity that best meets their individual needs. Some examples from around the nation where they do have open enrollment. California found that students in the state who used intra-district transfers for enrollment transferred for specialized programming. It could be advanced placement or other types of courses that that student would be interested in. Also to escape bullying, to shorten commutes, or just to find a school that was a better fit. We've had previous legislation that would allow a student to go to any school district where that parent worked. That did not pass, so this would fit for that situation. Some of those California school districts did lose students to other schools, but many of them reached out to their local community to see what could we do better so that your student wants to stay here. Those districts increased student retention and even attracted students from other districts where they were losing students previously. In 2023, a report of school administrators in Arizona, North Carolina, Indiana, and Florida felt that open enrollment incentivized them to, quote, create new or enhance existing programs in order to increase and retain enrollment. Basically, I think the bottom line, as I see it, is that leadership, innovation, and freedom is the answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. So, the school district where I live in Salem, I think the average cost per student is around $21,000, which is below the state average. And according to this, if a student were to transfer in, I would read it that the sending district would pay 80% up to 100% of that tuition.
Of the sending district's tuition.
And that's the numbers that it's decided at the state level. But what that number, to my understanding, doesn't include is, if you look at the Salem budget, it's actually an additional $6,000 per student, but that's the bond interest for all the renovations to the 8 schools we, at the local level, put a lot of money into. So I guess my concern is, if people were to transfer to these new school buildings that they did an amazing job doing, I feel like the student transferring to the district is not contributing to that, where the local taxpayer still is. So that's a concern I have with this. And
Right.
I'm just not sure if there's a way to address that.
Right. It would be a similar situation, I think, to any child moving in to the Salem district. They would be a new student who would not have contributed to a previous building project, let's say, or athletic field installation.
Follow up?
Follow up?
Points well taken. If a new family moves to the district, but the issue is their local taxes going forward will still be paying for that bond over several years, where the student transferring out of district into the district is not paying that. And it's about $6,000 per student if you add it on. So I feel like, I guess, what do we do in a situation like that? How do we address that issue? Because I look at that as kind of, some towns are good, who invested in their infrastructure. Now, some people are not, I think, paying the fair amount they should be paying if they went to the school.
This follows current law for open enrollment, and I think the Senate even had a bill from Senator Waters about CTE programs and students moving to a different CTE program, which had the same funding formula as being proposed in this. So I think it especially works well for the situation we're in, where most school districts are experiencing declining enrollment and would be happy to get the 80% of the sending school district's tuition.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think
So do you have a question? Senator Altshuler?
Yes.
Sorry, I missed you.
No worries. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question, Representative Cordelli. I think we have discussed something similar to this during the Senate session, and I think I'm going to ask you the same question. If the intention is to provide the best opportunities and the best education for children, why wouldn't the state increase its funding per child so that every school is the best school?
One, I think maybe that's the outside the scope of this legislation, but I would also say that money is not always the defining characteristic in terms of a good education and a good school.
Thank you very much.
Wait a minute, I have a question.
You have a question.
I know Representative Cordelli, you've got to go, but, and you just said Senator Altshuler's question was outside the scope of your legislation, but you did say something that caught my attention during your testimony,
Good.
which was, and you've always had my attention. So what can we do better to support to support local schools? When you were referencing the situation in California where local schools that were seeing children go to other schools, they started asking this question of themselves. So I want to pose that question back to you. And I think it aligns itself somewhat with funding, but if the schools are asking that question, don't we have a responsibility as a state to ask that of ourselves?
Sure. And one way we've done that is to provide legislation, which is now in law, for innovation for public schools, so that a school can apply to the State Board of Education and get waivers from any of the administrative rules, so that they have the increased flexibility like a charter school would have. So I think innovation is one way that local schools can address that, and I do not see if let's say the adequacy grant was increased to the 73.56 and a penny that Judge Ruhoff says, I'm not sure that that how much difference that's going to make in the education in a public school, and I'm not sure that it's going to guarantee property tax relief.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there by any chance another representative in here that needs to go someplace? Okay, then I will call Brian Winslow.
Morning, I have a printout of the one. Read if you'd like.
You have printouts?
Yes.
Great. Then you may not even need the 3 minutes.
My name is Brian Winslow. I'm here on behalf of the Northwood School Board, SAU 44. I want to be clear that the school choice offered in House Bill 741 is a benefit to students, but the mechanism proposed to create it is just chaotic to the point of outweighing the benefits. As written in the bill's methodology section, and the quote is, "It is not possible to predict the bill's impact on state aid programs or local school district revenues." And that's because the second quote, "It is not possible to predict how many students may seek to enroll in a school outside of their district." And because in section 7.1, it states, quote, "The pupil's resident district shall pay the receiving district an amount of not less than 80%, as the representative was just explaining. In Northwood, the 80% of the average cost per pupil is $17,979, which is the amount we would be billed for any student that chose to go to another district. At that rate, about every 5 students would be roughly equivalent to hiring 1 additional teacher on paper, the cost-wise. If just 5% of Northwood students attended other schools, we would have an unbudgeted bill of roughly $540,000. Perhaps the most important role that school boards play in small communities like Northwood is to prepare and recommend reasonable budgets built on student enrollment and student needs. In Northwood, we do so based on good faith, no nonsense predictions of actual cost. How could we honestly budget for funding levels if House Bill 741 passes. Should we ask for an additional $540,000 of our community and just hope that only 5% of our students are leaving? $540,000 is about 3.6% of Northwood's total budget, by the way. Excuse me, maybe we would not need those funds and that could be returned as surplus. Maybe that would not be nearly enough. And maybe some of those funds would be offset by students moving in. It's just incredibly difficult to bring forward a recommended budget when there's so much up in the air. If this bill goes into effect as it's stated in the language of January of 2026, we can't even have that discussion because the fiscal year 26 budget has already been adopted last month. It passed in our community, and this just would represent an unfunded additional charge to Northwood students that may balance out, that may not balance out. That's just unpredictable. If this was adopted, I feel that Northwood might be just fine, but I'm certain that some schools would really struggle, would fail flat out, and many schools would be financially stressed based on the funding mechanism behind this bill. I wish to respect your time, but I just encourage you not to vote against. I encourage you to vote against House Bill 41, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none.
Okay, thank
Do you
you.
have a question? No. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Barry Christina.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. Barry Christina from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. We are opposed to House Bill 741. It's my understanding that this is a similar bill or a mirrored bill from Senate Bill 101, which this committee re-referred to itself maybe a month or two ago. I'm going to talk about a couple of the provisions within the bill itself that are problematic and then a couple of the larger policy considerations. I will try to be brief. First, I'm on page 2. Lines 23 through 26. It states each district legislative body shall establish an open enrollment policy that allows pupils to transfer among schools within the district. The legislative body does not adopt policies. They vote on the money and the budget and expenditures. The school board adopts policies. It's also curious that while the bill is telling the legislative body, i.e. the voters at your annual meeting, to establish a policy, it's telling them how they have to vote, which we find very peculiar as well too. Instead of telling the people how they have to vote, we just tell them what they have to do outside of sort of the voting mechanism, if you will. Page 2, lines 28 through 36, where it talks about the capacity of each school. As I mentioned when we discussed Senate Bill 101, capacity of what? Budget capacity, staffing capacity, transportation capacity. Also, we have concerns that on lines 31 through 32, it says that the superintendent or the principal every month has to ascertain the number of vacancies in each individual school in the district and put that on the district website by the first of each month. This is another to-do list and just more busy work for school principals to run around and have to create another report and the IT guy to have to put it on the website every month. Always a lot of talk about test scores in this room and in 206 upstairs. If we've got principals running around this kind of busy, we're doing this kind of busy work that has absolutely nothing to do with academics or educational outcomes, then we need to change the focus and the conversation on test scores. Page 4, lines 3 through 6. The parent may provide transportation to a specific bus stop on an existing route of the receiving school or district. That district shall provide parents information regarding transportation options. We know that the sending district does not have to provide transportation. That is a huge problem when we're talking about inequities in educational outcomes. The parents who have the opportunity, who have transportation availability in the time of the morning to drive their kid 10, 20, 30 miles to a different high school may take advantage of that. And the the kids whose parents don't have the car or have to be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning and can't get them there are not going to be able to take advantage of the purported benefits of this bill. I think those are purely the statute, the language, the aspects in the bill that NHSBA objects to. A couple of the larger policy points, Mr. Winslow from the Northwood School Board sort of touched on this. You're basically forcing one school district to subsidize a different school district. The voters in one town are going to be subsidizing the school district in another town. There's talk about zip code inequality and zip code discrimination. I'll say briefly that if we're going to fund school districts solely by virtue of a zip code, that's going to be the outcome then. If we change zip code funding, then maybe we won't have these sorts of issues with your zip code determining your educational opportunities. Mr. Winslow spoke that it would be impossible to budget on a year-by-year basis. And one of the other questions that was asked during Senate Bill 101 is the word capacity is used in this bill a handful of times. What happens if we do have open slots? So we create an open enrollment school, we reach capacity, and then a new family moves in district in the middle of the school year, and that would put us over capacity per the language of the bill. What happens to the people that moved into that community? What happens to the kids who are from a different community that are attending that school? Are they kicked out? Do the other students have to get on a waiting list or find another school? The bill doesn't answer these questions. I understand the intent, but the way this bill works and the mechanism of this bill are not good for school districts, not good for students, and not good for taxpayers either. With that, I'll close my testimony and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have a question out of something that you just said. Are schools supposed to keep a couple of slots available just in case a family moves in?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I mean, there's nothing in law that requires school districts to do that. Certainly, we have a lot of districts over the last 20 or 25 years have seen declining enrollment, so they have open spots. There are also communities within the last 5 or 10 years that are growing that have had to put additions on elementary schools or build a new elementary school because they're at capacity. They don't have room for any more schools. So are they supposed to keep some spaces open? And again, there's nothing in law, but I think there are many school districts that do have room available based on their own capacity. I mean, if we're talking about number of heads and number of seats and number of kids, that's one level of capacity. But if we're talking about budget and staffing, that's a different kind of capacity that the bill doesn't
The reason I'm
address.
asking you just said that would be an issue. If you filled it, you had some spots, you filled it, and what would you do if another family moved into the district?
Sure.
So that's why I wanted the clarification on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Timothy. I think we have Broderick. No, it's not Broderick. We have a thing here. Yeah, Tim Broderick. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Senators on the committee, thank you for allowing me some of your time to testify today. My name is Dr. Timothy Broderick. I serve as superintendent for the Alton and Barnstead, New Hampshire school districts, which in addition to our 2 public kindergarten through 8th grade schools, also jointly operate Prospect Mountain High School, located in Alton. And to my knowledge, we currently run the state's only open enrollment program under RSA 194D, passed into law back in 2009. The bill under consideration before you would expand and clarify the provisions of the existing law, and I can tell you from our direct experience that if you wish to have a functional public school choice system in the state of New Hampshire, this is necessary. Many educational options exist for New Hampshire families. We have excellent public schools across the state, in fact, some of the best in the nation by some measures. New Hampshire parents may enroll their children in charter schools. They have the right to homeschool. Some elect to send their children to independent schools. Some families have access to education freedom accounts to help fund the various programs or services they've chosen for their children. But with all these options available to New Hampshire families, without a functional statewide public school choice system, our public schools are excluded from participating in this landscape of school choice. About 20 years ago, there were roughly 210,000 public school eligible children residing in New Hampshire. Now there are closer to 160,000. I try to only do very simple math in my head, but I think that's about 24%. And that means, unless a significant number of New Hampshire's public schools have shuttered the windows and closed the doors in the last 10 or 15 years, and they haven't, we have excess capacity in many of our schools. And my high school is one example of that, which is why our joint boards in Alton and Barnstead decided to adopt the provisions, or ask our legislative bodies a couple of years ago to adopt the provisions of this existing RSA and start an open enrollment program. Those two boards, my school boards, along with our high school faculty and myself, welcome an opportunity to compete with charter schools, with private schools, and with other public schools to show families that we are worthy of their choice. I'm from New Hampshire. I was born in Plymouth, raised in Warner. I graduated from Kearsarge Regional High School, but I also started my career in education and first worked as a superintendent in another state that has had statewide public school choice since 1994, and it did not ruin public education. It worked just fine. I'm trying to be brief. I think you know the rest. RSA 194D, as it exists, has not taken hold during the last 15 years. I've already told you. I have the only program that I believe I have the only program currently trying to operate, and it's not going particularly well. We're encountering a lot of difficulties because the field has not adopted or understood the provisions of the RSA, even with rulemaking and clarifications issued by the State Board of Education. So I think that's my testimony. I know you are short on time, but if you have questions, I am more than happy to answer.
Very short. We don't even have time. Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from the committee members?
I'm gonna just,
Senator Sullivan.
can you just get contact information? I'll email you or call you and ask you the questions offline.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Trumbull.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and committee members. Thank you for having me. My name is David Trumbull. I'm from the town of Ware. While I think the idea of open enrollment can be a wonderful thing for schools, I think it's a bad idea, and as is presented in this bill, for two reasons. First is that open enrollment would not provide choice to all children in New Hampshire. Under this bill, there are three groups at least of children who would be left out. First is those whose families cannot afford the transportation. Second is those whose children have a history of a discipline problem. And third is whether or not receiving schools will allow other schools to come. Let's look at the transportation issue. In Ohio, there's a report you'll see in my testimony here. They reported that on average, students who use inter-district open enrollment are relatively advantaged along both socioeconomic and achievement dimensions. And it makes sense, as has been previously testified. This is not something that low-income families will be able to access. Second is this question of the discipline. In New Hampshire, the odds of a white female student without a disability from a higher income family home attending a non-urban school being disciplined, exclusionary discipline, is like 1/40th as likely as a child who is male from an urban school with a disability, free and reduced eligible. This is from the Carsey Center's study on exclusionary discipline for New Hampshire. Each of those characteristics doubles or triples the rate of exclusion. So what happens is that in New Hampshire, schools will be able to say, no, you have discipline history, we don't want you. It's going to discriminate against children with disabilities, children who are free and reduced lunch, children of color, and children from urban schools. The third question is, what about urban schools? That same study in Ohio found that the urban districts, their big cities, were locked out. because the wealthier suburbs around the big cities refused to say they had any capacity. So what happens is that this is not choice for everybody, it's choice just for some people. So I think it goes philosophically against the choice question. The second thing is that the bill would harm children who attend poorly funded schools and would
One more minute.
exacerbate. How much?
One more minute.
Would exacerbate educational inequalities. New Hampshire is probably the worst state in the United States to do open enrollment because we are 50th in the country at providing state funding. The other states that have open enrollment, like Minnesota, 30% of the cost of education is paid by the local towns. In Michigan, it's only 40%. Our towns pay 70%. So you have good schools and you have poorly funded schools. In this state, if you adopt open enrollment, what's going to happen is that the families who have money in the poorly funded schools will seek opportunities to go to a well-funded school elsewhere. But they will leave behind children who do not have that opportunity and children who receive special ed and have discipline problems. So the alternative, as was pointed out, is to fund all of the schools. If you do that first, if you fund all the schools in New Hampshire, you won't have as many who want to go to another school, but it would also mean that any children who do go do not go in an inequitable system. If you adopt this program in New Hampshire, you create inequality. You exacerbate inequality, which is the hallmark characteristic of our publicly funded school system because the state does not behave responsibly. Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio, other states that do this have a responsible state government that pays enough to all the schools so that there isn't a big disparity between towns. We don't have that because we spend so little on our schools from the state level. And I give you a lot of details further in my written testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Hawkins.
I think you marked not speaking.
Okay, then we're all set. Unless there's somebody in the audience who wants to say something on House Bill 741. Seeing none, it ends the hearing on House Bill 741. It's that one. Okay, we'll open up the hearing on House Bill 749. And the Representative Moffett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we up?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Busy day today. There's some activity across the street, as you may know. So to get right to it, for the record, I'm Representative Mike Moffett, representing Merrimack 4, Loudon, Canterbury, and Loudon. I also chair the House Committee on State Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs. So to get right to it, this bill simply requires a minimum of an hour of classroom study regarding the origin and nature of communism. So many schools no longer teach history as they used to. That used to be my thing. When I taught U.S. history way back when, there was much less history. There's been 50 more years of history that's happened since then. Communism is a function of the 20th century, and oftentimes we had trouble getting to the 20th century teaching history. Now we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century. So history is a problem, and this is a big part of that problem, is lack of understanding about things such as communism. And so the question of why communism comes up, fair question. Why not Islamofascism? Why not anarchism? At the House Education hearing, a representative asked, why don't we study ableism, or why don't we require students to know about ableism? So indeed, all these other movements rate attention, of course, but to include all of them in this statute would be unwieldy. Americans today should understand what communism is and how it profoundly impacts our world, not only historically, but today. It's a political theory derived from Karl Marx. Hopefully you all know something about that. It advocates class warfare, resulting in all property being state-owned. It requires a centrally planned economy as opposed to one that reflects market forces. And without exception, communist countries depend upon networks of secret police and that's a requirement for them to impose a one-party state, one-party will on everyone. And while there are different gradations and shades of communism, it remains what it's always been. It's an atheist, totalitarian ideology incompatible with free democracies everywhere, such as our own. Communism can't compete with free societies. Hence, its need to undermine and topple our systems. They've always tried to do it. They're trying to do it now, although a lot of folks don't get that. So throughout the 20th century, communism resulted in repression, gulag, prison camps, endless violent conflicts, subversion, both hot and cold wars. Quantify that in terms of lives. In 2010, Professor Stephen Roosevelt wrote in Red Holocaust, the communist regimes caused the killing of at least 100 million people, at least 100 million people murdered. Indeed, communist nuclear missiles from China to Korea to Siberia have us targeted even now. Does everybody know that? No, they don't. Should they? Yes, they should. Speaking of nuclear missiles, I know there are a couple others besides me here who remember Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. I was a seven-year-old second grader. For a week in October, the chair may remember this, and a couple others, our country was terrified. As a youngster, seeing all the adults terrified that there's going to be a nuclear war, we were told in my hometown of Groveton we were going to go to the town mill to a fallout shelter. How many young folks today know about that part of our history, the Cuban Missile Crisis, or the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese boat people? Imagine, as some of you know, the result of a communist regime so heinous that the people in Vietnam 50 years ago got into boats, headed out to sea. Hundreds, thousands drowned or were raped or killed by pirates, or recaptured by communists and sent to re-education camps for years. And there were lucky few who made it to America, and those folks get it. You know some of them. In the House today, there were several co-sponsors of this bill who are refugees from communist systems. Next to Cambodia, or next to Vietnam, is Cambodia. While the boat people headed out to sea, over 2 million Cambodians murdered by communist Khmer Rouge between 75 and 1979. Genocide. How many Americans know about the killing fields? Should people know about the killing fields and these millions of people murdered in just Cambodia in our lifetimes? So, again, ableism doesn't have nukes pointed at us. I won't get into the communist weaponry I've faced myself in various conflicts. So it's personal to me, but to many others as well, as I mentioned, the co-sponsors. Now, we sponsors, worry that young people are clueless, unaware about Stalin, Lenin, Mao, Iron Curtain, Sputnik, Bay of Pigs, Cuban Missile Crisis, Glasnost, Perestroika, Rosenbergs. Why did we execute the Rosenbergs? Why did Chinese spy balloons fly over us now? Why does Taiwan matter? I visited Taiwan, that island of freedom, 17 months ago. A couple of your colleagues visited there last fall. Those folks in Taiwan truly embody the live free or die ethos. They live it every day. So would a 1-hour classroom session on the origin and nature of communism matter? Yes. With communist nuclear missiles trained on us as we speak, don't young folks need to know that? And should they wonder why this is so? So this proposed statute does not require any course. It doesn't even require an assessment. It simply asks that students spend at least an hour on the subject of history, nature of communism. Implementing the requirement would be largely up to the localities. The DOE, should this move forward, will do what the DOE does. They'll put out an advisory. There's a 1-hour video. There's already one that exists embedded in a certain course. It should not be that hard to implement. And I'm sure some districts will go well beyond this minimal requirement. I hope they do. That's fine. Local control. And I'm sure this measure will result, it already has, the fact that I'm talking here and people are watching and will watch, raises awareness about this. And I'm a history guy. I know about McCarthyism. We're going to hear about that, and that's okay. So to finish up, I think out of this, learning will happen. It's like the civics measure that I championed and has become law. I got a card to finish up, I got a card the other day from a school board chair who said, stop micromanaging us. Let us run our own schools. She didn't like the civics requirement. That's law. Proud of that. Every high school grad now has to pass a civics test. I think that's one of the best things we've done here in a long time, education-wise. But she took umbrage to this measure being brought forth. And my answer to that is maybe folks like that should study a little bit of civics, because the people's elected representatives, which is us, it is our responsibility to have a clue and to care about education, and once in a while show that we are engaged and that we have some things that we think should be part of public education. Thank you for your time. I know you're running late. I'd be happy to take any questions if
Thank you.
there are
Any
any.
quick question, anybody? No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Richard Bailey? Boulay. You waited a long time.
I know. Thank you very much. I'm Richard Boulay. I'm a registered lobbyist here in Concord, but I'm not here today as a lobbyist. I'm representing myself as a former teacher in Littleton High School for 19 years and over at the New Hampshire Tech for 15 years. You may know me as a lobbyist, but I did have another life. I am strongly in favor of this bill. I think it is very, very needed. Now, different school districts have done it well. In Littleton, where I taught starting in 1960 to 1979, before I joined the Gallup administration here in Concord, I had a course that I taught, and it was called Problems of Democracy. And in that course, we spent 8 weeks talking about what is communism, talking about the fall of the Tsar, the revolution there, and the point in all the things that Representative Markman just explained to you, which I won't go over. I think it's so important that kids know about what is communism and the threat to democracy. And that was a good name for the course, Problem to Democracy. You know, I look at the students that come back to me and see me and tell me how much they enjoyed it, how much they learned. And I looked at some of these people and I say, how successful have they been? Not just because of me, but I think what we offered them. And I look at one of them was a former state senator from Littleton that just left the Senate. Another one was from the North Country, was an executive counselor, very involved in government. Another one was Dr. Shep Melnick, who today sits at Boston College as the chair, the Tip O'Neill chair, someone who is very well educated. Another was a top auto industry leader here in Concord, runs one of the largest dealership. Another one became the commissioner of the Department of Transportation. You didn't realize that Littleton had so many people that come back to Concord. Another was a professional baseball player who was a player and pitching coach for the Boston Red Sox. And finally, one that I think of is a Catholic priest serving in New Hampshire now for 50 years this year. He's the pastor down in Durham at the Catholic Church down there. I guess it one more. It was the head of the credit union here in Concord.
One more minute.
This course, I think, really helped these people to get their values and to get them to be critical thinkers. Now, the only problem with this is I said this course that I was teaching was 8 weeks. This is only 1 hour, but it's the beginning. And I really know there are other schools that are doing better than an hour. But every school, in my opinion, in the state should spend some time to do this. And I urge you to pass this legislation and try to encourage it to be more than just an hour. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
It's easy to get away with in a long time.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wish to speak on this bill? If not, the ends the hearing on 749 and and we have one more to go. It's House Bill 754. And Senator Altshuler will introduce it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Senator Deborah Altshuler from District 24, and I have the honor of introducing House Bill 754 for Representative Nancy Murphy of Nashua, who is voting on the House floor as we speak. So I'll read her testimony. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. House Bill 754 FN, a bill I filed on behalf of a constituent, outlines a process for establishing automatic discovery in due process hearings for actions seeking to enforce special education rights. It seeks to codify which documents parents should receive before a due process hearing in an attempt to make due process less legally onerous for pro se parents and advocates. Many parents are unaware of what their rights are to discovery of items in the possession of the school district in order to support their child's special education rights. Though I have been told that many districts like my own, Merrimack, do an excellent job providing these documents to parents before they begin due process, my constituent, in his work as an educational advocate, is aware that others do not. The process is unnecessarily more arduous for those parents. Zip codes and SAU numbers should not determine which records parents are provided, nor the timeframes in which they are received relative to the hearing. Codifying this will help streamline the process for hearing officers who could expect a list of basic documents to be produced at the outset of a due process hearing and improve communication between parties. HB 754 FN is a bipartisan collaborative effort to support children with disabilities and their parents as they seek due process in enforcing special education rights. If passed, House Bill 754 would improve and guarantee consistency in access to documents central to due process. This would ensure that no child or family will be left disadvantaged by lack of access to pre-hearing documents that could impact the outcome of the hearing or result in a child's needs not being fully addressed. I respectfully request that you recommend House Bill 754 FN ought to pass, and thank you for your time and consideration. Kind regards, Representative Nancy Murphy, Hillsborough 12, Town of Merrimack.
Thank you very much, Senator Altshuler. Kristen Mancharamani. Welcome.
Good afternoon now. Thank you. Kristen Moncharmani, advocate for special education here in New Hampshire, and my colleague Tim Linehan is with me as well. We very much urge this legislation to go forward and the committee to vote for its passage based on our personal experience helping families navigate dispute resolution. And I would back up a bit and say, we really should view our expenditures on special education as investments for those students and their future, and really investments kind of in our system. And some of the things that this bill would accomplish, in addition to what was already discussed, of streamlining what is the case for the hearing officer so that that person, he or she, can then go forward and better streamline the questions to be answered for parents, particularly pro se parents. That's certainly a goal. We've had the experience to comment on that a bit before moving on to some other things I think this would accomplish. Where we're in a due process hearing, there are thousands of pages of exhibits and documents, And nowhere in those is it easy to find progress reports. Progress reports should be the most basic thing out there in terms of we've set goals. That's what the process is about. That's what all those meetings are about. The students should be making progress based on services being delivered to get them able to access the curriculum and their education. Far too many of the cases that come to our office, even the basics of progress reports are elusive, to say the least, and sometimes admitted not to exist. The cases, documents as basic as what is the current IEP and has it been signed by a parent and when? We have had due process cases where that was not clearly answered at any point in a significant case with stacks and stacks of documents. So again, presentation of this up front, even though it could be accessed through the more complicated process of discovery, helps the hearing officers, it helps the parents. The other thing that I would like to point out that I think it would really do is give school districts and the LEA who might be getting a case, they might be fairly new to it. They've been doing that for a year. This case has been going on for years. They're looking at a situation and by saying, okay, the minute a parent files for dispute, we need to look at this core set of documents, which is what progress reports do we have? What are the last 3 years of IEPs? What evaluations do we have? By putting that right in front of the district itself at the outset of the case, because it has to be submitted to the hearing officer, we think resolution sessions and resolving the dispute before getting all the way to the hearing might happen more fluidly. Everyone has to look at the same pieces of documentation and say, do we really have a dispute that we should be bringing all the way to a hearing, or are there things that we're missing in this record that we need to now work on doing a better job with going forward? The last piece I would say is just that when we look at this as an investment, and we're spending a lot of dollars on special education in this state, I think the knowledge that the minute a dispute presents itself, this packet of things, including progress reports, which is probably one of the most important to me, will be required to be presented to the hearing officer, would raise some awareness and raise an importance being placed on progress reports actually being produced. We see a shocking number of cases where there just are not progress reports being produced. We see a very tiny fraction of the cases in the state, so by no means do I want to imply that in most special ed cases, in the majority of them, they are being produced. But in our tougher cases is where they're so important. And too many of those that are coming to our office don't have progress consistently over years.
Okay, your time is up. Do you have anything else to add, or did you have anything to say?
Just that in this really came out of a case where about 5 days before the hearing, 2,700 pages were provided to the parent. And that just creates an untenable situation for a lot of people. I know for myself, I could read about 200 pages before the hearing, not 2,700.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is to get it sooner.
Okay. Any other questions from these committee members? Seeing no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is anybody else, what's left of the audience, who has anything to say about 754 House Bill? Seeing none. This concludes the hearing. And it also concludes the public hearing on the House bills that we have just dealt with. Thank you for coming, and thank you for those who had to wait a while before they could be heard. You may go home.